Welcome back, literary speedsters. Today, we're embarking on an expedition deep into the heart of wool by Hugh Howey, a story so captivating, Apple TV had to bring it to life for viewers worldwide. You won't need to bunker down for months to get through this story, because we've mastered the art of the rapid read without losing an ounce of Hugh's atmospheric storytelling. Let's get started.
Chapter 1. Holston climbed the spiral staircase, his each deliberate step resonating through the worn treads. As he ascended, the sounds of children playing above grew louder, their joyous laughter filling the air. Holston marveled at the wear and tear on the staircase, each tread bearing the marks of countless lives and the passage of time. The silo they inhabited seemed ill-suited for such a prolonged existence, as if it were originally intended for a different purpose.
As he neared the top, the cacophony of children's laughter reached its peak. Holston reminisced about his own childhood in the silo, the sense of wonder and exploration that seemed endless. But those days were long gone, buried beneath the weight of his duty as a sheriff and the secret life he had been carrying for 3 years. Finally reaching the top, Holston found himself in the cafeteria, where children played amid scattered chairs. A couple overseeing the chaos greeted him from a distance. Holston, devoid of energy and desire, peered past the commotion to the distant view projected on the cafeteria wall. It was the same desolate landscape, the hills and crumbling remnants of the world outside, unchanging since his childhood. A child brushed against Holston's knees, a fleeting reminder of what could have been, of the twins he and his late wife, Allison, had hoped for. But time had run out, and the lottery they had won to become parents had passed to another couple. Holston carried the ticket with him always, a token of their lost dreams. Lost in his thoughts, Holston turned away from the scene and walked towards his office, haunted by the ghostly struggles of the past. Deputy Marnes greeted him there, noticing Holston's somber demeanor. Confused, Marnes offered to fetch the mop, assuming there was a mess to clean in the holding cell. But Holston had a different plan. He handed the key to Marnes, instructing him to summon the mayor. A heavy sigh escaped Holston as he finally made his decision, one he had contemplated for 3 long years. "Tell her I want to go outside," Holston said, relinquishing his post as the sheriff and embracing the unknown that lay beyond the silo. As Marnes looked at him with bewilderment, Holston felt a surge of determination, a release from the burden that had weighed on him for so long. The journey outside awaited, and Holston was ready to embark on this daring adventure, ready to face the truth that lay beyond the confines of their underground existence. And so, with the key handed over and his resignation evident, Holston's fate was sealed. The first chapter of his story ended, leaving the reader captivated, eager to join him on his perilous and enticing quest beyond the walls of the silo. Chapter 2. Holding Cell. In a small holding cell, Holston reflects on the clarity of the view outside while pondering his impending death sentence. He wonders why the view seems more vivid from where he sits, contemplating whether previous cleaners put extra effort into preserving their last glimpse of the outside world. Lost in thought, Holston gazes out at the lifeless landscape, its brown hills and gray sky enveloping him. The only movement is from the drifting clouds, mimicking the beasts of old. The massive wall of the cell displays a slice of the desolate wasteland, complete with a soft blur that resembles the smearing of oil on a lens. Yet, from a distance, it deceives the eye, appearing as a tempting invitation to step out into the open air. However, upon closer inspection, Holston notices the glaring dead pixels scattered amongst the muted tones. They possess an intense brightness that pulls at him, like small windows offering a glimpse into a brighter reality. Holston wonders if anyone in the silo knows how to fix them and ponders the gradual death of the pixels, drawing a parallel to the state of the world outside. He questions whether the people in the silo themselves are living in a false reality. Interrupting his thoughts, Mayor Johns appears behind the bars, acknowledging her occasional visits to the cell to savor the view. Holston bitterly mentions his late wife, Allison, weaving together his love for her and his current predicament. The mayor, gazing at the clouds on the display, remarks on the clarity of the view, prompting Holston's silence. The conversation turns towards dinner, a tradition where the condemned get to choose their final meal. Holston, well versed in the rules, cuts off the mayor dismissively, reminding her of his experience serving Allison's last meal. As the two observe the bleak landscape, Holston bitterly remarks that the prisoners will enjoy a clear sunset on their final day, contrasting it with Allison's blurred experience. Johns mentions she has been mayor for too long, having sent more people to cleaning than anyone else. Holston dismisses her sympathy, highlighting the inevitability of his death and the resentment he still feels towards Allison's fate. Their conversation grows tense as they contemplate whether Holston will go through with cleaning the censors. The mayor reveals that other inmates threatened not to do it, but ultimately cleaned as expected. Holston remembers Allison's choice not to resist and realizes that his and her motives went beyond the act itself. Curiosity and wonder fueled them, a desire to discover the truth beyond the lies. When Johns asks directly if he plans to clean, Holston evades a straightforward answer, causing distress to the mayor. He dismisses the importance of his decision and the concerns of others, as either choice would ultimately yield the same outcome. Johns, anxious, pleads with him to inform her if he changes his mind about his last meal. As she leaves, Holston's shattered emotions resurface, reminded of his time as a sheriff, and he corrects Johns on his current title. In parting, Johns advises Holston to eat, and he marvels at her understanding of his inability to sleep. Left alone in his cell, Holston wrestles with his emotions, his impending fate, and the grim realization that the outside world may not be what he had always believed. Tomorrow promises to be his salvation, regardless of whether it leads to life or death. Chapter 3. 3 years earlier. In a small silo condo lived Holston and his wife Allison. Surrounded by stacks of old files, they were engrossed in their respective pursuits. Allison, a computer wizard, unraveled the secrets of the past, while Holston, the sheriff, dealt with new complaints and paperwork. But their conversation was about to take them on a journey they never expected. Allison shared her discovery with Holston. There had been more than one uprising in the history of the silo. Holston, initially unfazed, dismissed it as not surprising, believing that no crime or mob was ever truly original. However, Allison's findings intrigued him. She explained that the reports she was piecing together revealed a pattern of uprisings occurring every couple of decades. And during the most recent uprising, someone had wiped the servers, erasing the history of the silo's ancestors. This led Allison to question who was responsible for this act. Holston, now fully engaged, considered the possibilities. He suggested that perhaps the servers had been neglected, causing the view outside the silo to blur and driving people to revolt. Or maybe it was a form of population control before the lottery system. Allison, delving deeper into her research, revealed that the servers weren't wiped out by the rebels, as they had been led to believe. Instead, she suspected that their own ancestors, the so-called good guys, were responsible for erasing the hard drives. This revelation shook Holston to his core. He had always believed in the righteousness of their silo's existence, but now he was faced with the possibility that their history had been erased to prevent the repetition of past revolts. The idea that there might be hidden information that could drive people insane or make them want to leave the silo unsettled him. Despite his reservations, Allison was determined to uncover the truth. She had already published a white paper on retrieving deleted files, and the information was spreading throughout the silo. Holston warned her about the dangers of digging too deep, but she argued that knowing the truth was always good. She believed it was better for them to discover it than for someone else to stumble upon it. Holston, conflicted, glanced at his files, knowing that the pressure was mounting for him to find someone to send to cleaning. The deteriorating view outside the silo and the anxieties of the people added to the urgency. He feared that Allison's quest for the truth might ignite a dangerous chain of events. With a heavy heart, Holston urged his wife to stop. He understood that the truth had its own consequences, and that knowing it might disrupt the delicate balance of their existence. His duty as sheriff weighed heavily on him, and he wanted to release the pressure slowly, not through a sudden reckoning ignited by the revealing of long-buried secrets.
Chapter 4. Present Time. Holston sits on the steel bench in the airlock, his mind overwhelmed. As if to ceremoniously prepare him for his own demise, the head of the cleaning lab, a man named Nelson, slowly and meticulously dresses Holston in a hazard suit. This suit, fortified with extra layers, is said to provide Holston with more time out there than anyone before him.
Out there is an unsettling concept in this world, not a landscape filled with natural wonders, but a deadly and forsaken hellscape. Holston's mind dances back in time, tracing the ghostly echoes of his wife, Allison, dressed in an identical suit. The vivid memory of her final, brave wave, her steady march towards the dilapidated city on the horizon, her agonizing death, all etched deeply into his soul. Back in the present, Holston imagines his suit dissolving, picturing the blood pooling in his lifeless body as his wife suffered the same fate. Nelson guides Holston through the routine, similar to what he had witnessed with previous condemned individuals. Holston wonders why people comply and go along with their fate, even when they are fully aware of what awaits them. His thoughts are interrupted as Nelson straps the suit and helmet on him. The airlock door leading back to the silo reminds Holston that someone is likely watching. Nelson reviews the procedure, even though both of them know there is no book to follow. The suit makers and cleaning techs hold an intense reverence in the silo community, and their instructions are never questioned. Nelson shows Holston the scrubbers, cleaning bottle, towel, and ablating films, going through each step carefully. Nelson checks if everything is fitting properly, and Holston glances around the airlock, feeling trapped in his existence. He confirms that he is ready to go, surprising both himself and Nelson with his readiness. Holston is reminded of how ready his wife had been, which fills him with a mix of sadness and determination. With his mind set, Holston prepares himself to embark on the same journey his wife took, knowing that this task is both his duty and a final act of defiance against the silo that took his wife away from him. And so, Holston steps into the unknown, enveloped in a protective suit that holds the secrets of the outside world, ready to face whatever awaits him beyond the silo walls. Chapter 5. 3 years earlier, in the cafeteria, Holston finds his wife, Allison, being restrained by Connor and 2 other employees. She is desperately trying to run towards the airlock. Holston tries to calm her down, but she continuously repeats, "I want to go out. I want to go out. I want to go out." He realizes that she has signed her death certificate by expressing her desire to leave the silo. They lock her up in a holding cell, where she sits calm and silent while Holston pleads with her to talk. As the hours pass, Allison remains silent, causing speculation and rumors to spread throughout the silo. Holston is tormented by the sudden destruction of everything he knew. Finally, in the darkness of the holding cell, Allison whispers, "It's not real." Intrigued, Holston leans closer and encourages her to explain. Allison reveals that she has discovered deleted programs on the hard drives, which create lifelike images on the screens. She believes that the IT department holds the secret knowledge about the outside world, and that everything they see is manipulated. Allison is convinced that the uprisings in the silo were fueled by the doubt that things are not as bad outside as they seem. She speculates that it could have been the younger generations, newly married couples, or elderly residents seeking something beyond the limited walls of the silo. Holston is shocked by Allison's revelations and the forbidden knowledge she possesses. Allison explains that expressing any desire to leave the silo is the great offense because all uprisings started with that desire. She wiped the evidence she found on the hard drives, not wanting others to know. She plans to come back for Holston after discovering the truth. Holston tries to reason with Allison, suggesting they expose what she found to start a meaningful change. However, she refuses, believing it would only lead to another uprising. Holston questions why the banished silo cleaners never return, but Allison insists that they choose to stay away due to betrayal. As the conversation continues, Holston's anger subsides, replaced by a sense of hopelessness. Allison reveals that they now possess new knowledge, making everything fall into place. She reassures Holston that one day he will understand too. Holston knows their time together is limited, with Allison's banishment scheduled for the next day. He reflects on the moon's position and their dwindling time. Allison pats his hand, assuring him that one day he will also come to know the truth. Chapter 6. Present time. Holston, devastated by the absence of his wife Allison, had spent years waiting for her return, slowly unraveling the lies of the silo. On the second anniversary of her departure, Holston contemplated going outside, but fear held him back. Now, 1 year later, he finds himself alone in the airlock, wearing a cleaning suit and filled with both doubts and conviction. As the argon chambers hiss and the room fills with gas, Holston stands before the forbidden door to the outside world. It groans open, revealing a glimpse of the breathtaking scenery beyond. He squeezes through the gap, stumbling blindly through the fog of condensed argon. Holston finds himself at the bottom of a concrete ramp, leading to a world he had only ever seen on screens. The vibrant green grass, blue skies, and white clouds captivate him. Overwhelmed with joy and a sense of pity, he cleans the silo's cameras, realizing that the view from inside the silo was a distorted illusion. As he considers why this lie has been perpetuated, Holston wonders about the uprisings and the motives behind hiding the beauty of the outside world. He also ponders Allison's fate and contemplates going to find her. However, realizing that he must maintain appearances and illusions, Holston decides to complete his cleaning duties. He scrubs the lenses, wipes away the grime, and applies the necessary cleaning materials. As he finishes, he feels a sense of urgency to join the others outside, to explore the vastness of the world that beckons. With a final look at the unseen watchers in the cafeteria and lounge, Holston walks away from the silo, heading towards the unknown. He follows in Allison's footsteps, aware that even familiar landmarks have been illusions. Holston is filled with a newfound freedom and understands the reasons behind the silo's secrets. He becomes determined to uncover the truth about the outside world, the lies that have kept them inside for generations. With each step, Holston's curiosity and thirst for knowledge grow stronger. Chapter 7. Our hero Holston trudged uphill, awestruck by the verdant life beneath his feet and the boundless azure sky overhead. But even in this expanse of wondrous vibrancy, a gut-wrenching cramp strikes him, a wolf gnawing at his innards, an intrusive reminder of his lack of sustenance. Unyielding, Holston chooses to press on, determined to crest the hill and disappear beyond the watchers in the cafeteria. With each step, the pain escalates, a merciless adversary gnashing and tearing at his stomach. Amidst the torment, Holston's world ignites. Brilliant flashes of white-hot lightning spark across his field of vision. Reduced to a primal state of survival, he claws his way up the hill, an unwavering resolve his only guiding light. But this light begins to falter as his visor intermittently flickers before falling into pitch darkness. Encased in black, pain lurches again, a deadly serpent coiling tighter. Frantically, Holston fumbles with the latches on the back of his helmet, a realization dawning upon him. He's running out of air. The claustrophobia is crippling. He thrashes, pounding at the stubborn latches with his cumbersome gloves. An unthinkable fear engulfs him. Is he destined to perish in this suffocating suit, consumed by his own recycled breaths? Just when hope begins to fade, his hand brushes against a sharp rock salvation in the form of a simple tool. With a trembling hand and blind determination, Holston strikes the latch, the monotonous cracks echoing his desperate will to survive. Finally, a click. One latch undone. Transfixed by a sliver of light, Holston strikes again, freeing his helmet. He could see. His vision blurred by teary relief, he greedily gasps for a breath of the longed-for fresh, blue air. Alas, his triumphant breath is poisoned, assaulting his lungs like a cruelly swung fist. A horrific revelation strikes him, an icy dagger through his heart. The world is not green, not blue. It is lifeless, desolate. An unforgiving expanse of brown grass beneath a dreary, gray sky. The beautiful lie was only in his helmet's visor, an illusion shattered. As his life force wanes, Holston stumbles upon an unregistered object, a silent testament to a life past. It's a brittle remnant, a silent testament to the lie he had carried from the silo. He clutches at it, at his truth as he crumbles, ravaged by the toxic claws of death. Finally, Holston's final thought drifts towards the onlookers, the witnesses of his waning life, curled up in the barren crevice of a lifeless hill beneath the brooding shadow of a silent city. What sight do they behold, he wonders, as he finally surrenders to the inescapable embrace of oblivion. Chapter 8. Mayor Johns sits in her silo, contemplating the fact that knitting needles are artifacts from a previous world. She carefully selects a pair of needles and begins knitting a sweater. As she knits, her mind wanders to the origins of the cotton yarn and the lives that have contributed to its creation. Reflecting on her own mortality, Johns is interrupted by Deputy Marnes, who brings her 3 folders containing candidates for the position of sheriff. Johns shows interest in a candidate named Juliet, who has proven herself to be capable and independent. Marnes shares his positive experiences with Juliet during a past investigation. They discuss the other candidates, but deem them as filler choices. Despite her desire to continue knitting in peace, Johns decides to go down to the lower levels to meet Juliet in person. Marnes suggests conducting the interview in her office, but Johns insists on visiting Juliet's workplace to better understand her and the lives of the lower levels. As they prepare to leave, a dust tornado descends upon the silo, temporarily obscuring their view. Undeterred, Johns sees this trip as an opportunity to distance herself and Marnes from the weight of their responsibilities. Despite being misunderstood as a campaign trip, Johns recognizes the deeper significance of their visit. Johns's inner monologue ponders the fragility of their world and her own role in its continuation. Realizing that now is not the time for speeches or festivities, Johns and Marnes make their way through the crowd of well-wishers. Johns contemplates the changing tides and feels the weight of time passing. She believes that they are on the brink of something unknown, and she must confront her fears about the future. With a determination to distance herself from the celebrations and find solace in quiet contemplation, Johns and Marnes set off on their journey to meet Juliet. Johns understands that her time as mayor is coming to an end, and she fears what may happen to their world without her guidance. Chapter 9. In the bustling stairwell of the silo, Mayor Johns and Deputy Marnes made their way down, struggling against the flow of people heading upward. The energy and recent cleaning had charged the air, and the sound of John's walking stick on the metal steps created a rhythmic accompaniment to their descent. As they moved, they were greeted by nods and whispers of, "Hey, Mayor." Amidst the hustle and bustle, Johns and Marnes found a moment to catch their breath and chat. Marnes inquired about the number of floors they were planning to tackle, and Johns playfully teased him about being tired already. In a moment of weariness, Johns imagined Marnes carrying her down the staircase in his arms, escaping the burden of strength and responsibility. However, she quickly dismissed the thought, feeling guilty for even entertaining such an idea. As they continued their descent, the pair encountered a porter named Connor hauling bundles up the stairs. To Johns, there was something admirable about these workers who did the job her knees could never manage. She wanted to offer some encouraging words, but Connor was already gone, propelled by the relentless flow of people eager to catch a glimpse of the outside. Refreshed, Johns and Marnes resumed their journey. Johns revealed her plan to make a few stops along the way, including a visit to the nursery on the 20th floor. Marnes jokingly asked if she intended to kiss babies, but Johns had a different motive in mind. She wanted to stop by the nursery to meet Juliet's father, Peter Nichols, who worked there. She hoped to gain some insight into Juliet based on her father's perspective. Amidst their conversation, the traffic gradually decreased as they descended further. Johns couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension as they ventured into territory she hadn't seen in nearly a year. The scent of dyes and chemicals from the garment district filled the air, and Johns realized that the post-cleaning frenzy had not only offered a clear view of the outside, but also injected vitality into the entire silo. The economy was flourishing, and there was a newfound sense of connectivity among the residents. Arriving at the nursery landing, Johns and Marnes caught their breath. They were greeted by a nurse who recognized Johns as the mayor and directed them inside. In the hushed nursery, Johns noticed the stringent enforcement of silence, which caught her by surprise. The nurse handed them white cloth robes to wear and offered to hold their bags. Robed and ready, Johns and Marnes made their way into the nursery. The signs on the walls reinforced the importance of silence, and the squeal of rusted hinges was noticeably absent. Inside, they were greeted by Dr. Peter Nichols, a tall and lean man with a confident demeanor. He acknowledged their presence and expressed his initial skepticism about being of much help about his daughter. He explained that he hadn't seen Juliet since she became a shadow 20 years ago. Johns inquired about the lack of visits between Juliet and her father, prompting Dr. Nichols to share the heartbreaking story of his son, Nicholas, who had not survived. This revelation took Johns by surprise, as she realized she had missed this detail in the file. Dr. Nichols explained that Juliet blamed herself and others for the loss, leading to her decision to work as a shadow in the mechanical department. The grief had driven her away from her father, and they only saw each other once at her mother's funeral. Curious about Juliet's suitability for the position of silo sheriff, Johns questioned whether Dr. Nichols knew anything that might disqualify her. He seemed unconvinced of the necessity for a sheriff, and wondered why Juliet had been chosen. Marnes mentioned that she had assisted them in an investigation before, but Dr. Nichols remained skeptical. As they bid farewell to Dr. Nichols and retrieved their belongings, Johns couldn't help but question Marnes' judgment in nominating Juliet for the sheriff position. She wondered if his decision was clouded by personal factors, just as she pondered her own willingness to support his choice. With these thoughts swirling in their minds, they exited the nursery and returned to the main waiting room, ready to face the challenges and uncertainties that awaited them. Chapter 10. Johns and Marnes embark on a journey down the silo. As they descend, they pass tradesmen carrying heavy loads, evoking a pang of guilt in Johns for their toil. Doubt begins to creep into Johns as they reach the 30th floor, realizing the difficulty of the descent. They observe the upper water treatment plant and notice the changes in the silo's structure. The floors, sparsely populated, draw their attention, with the silo servers symbolizing the power and hope of the community. Johns contemplates the unspoken hope within the silo, the possibility of life outside, and the vital role of it in making it feasible. Feeling weary, Johns and Marnes take a rest on the 34th floor. They engage in a conversation about the selection process for important roles in the silo and the need for approval from it. Johns decides to visit it in person to informally discuss her nominations. Meanwhile, they observe the stringent security measures in place, even for staff members. They are shown into a conference room to meet with Bernard Holland, the head of it. Johns and Marnes marvel at the size and grandeur of the IT department. They discuss the recent cleaning and the improvement in atmospheric toxin levels. Johns presents her list of candidates for the sheriff position, intending to have them approved by Bernard. However, to her surprise, Bernard already has a candidate in mind. Billings. A tense discussion ensues as Johns and Marnes express their disagreement with Bernard's choice. Bernard reveals that their preferred candidate has been implicated in irregularities and improper claims within the IT department. Despite not making any formal accusations, Bernard suggests that the candidate is unsuitable for a career in high law. Johns takes offense to Bernard's insinuations and firmly states that she will consider their preferred candidate regardless. She emphasizes the importance of her role as mayor in making decisions for the silo. As the meeting concludes, Johns retrieves the contract for their preferred candidate and folds it in half, signaling her determination to proceed with the nomination. She rebukes Bernard for betraying her trust and insists on leaving, despite his efforts to offer hospitality. Johns and Marnes request a refill of their water canteens before they depart, with Bernard observing their exchange intently. Chapter 11. The weariness of the climb weighs heavily on Johns as she descends through the silo. Doubt seeps into her mind, making her question if this journey is just an exercise in futility. But she remains fixated, driven by the need to convince Juliet, a woman from mechanical, to take on the important job and prove Bernard wrong. Johns, an old and experienced mayor, senses that her time at the helm is coming to an end. She realizes that the most important thing she can do for the silo is to ensure her legacy endures without power abuses or uprisings. The tiredness in her legs is matched by a newfound awareness of the strings Bernard has woven throughout the silo, and she knows that she and Marnes must act. As they make their way down to the landing, Johns realizes they have veered off course and are passing through the hydroponic gardens. The scent of lush vegetation fills the air, highlighting their deviation from the stairs. They encounter a porter carrying sacks of fruit, and Johns thanks him before they enter the gardens. The sight of the workers tending to the plants and the sense of fresh produce awaken Johns' appreciation for their hard work. Upon reaching the tasting and dining halls, Johns and Marnes leave their bags and venture further into the vast network of the hydroponic gardens. They reminisce about the past, including a hilarious rabbit theft that had baffled law enforcement. Marnes reflects on the tension that existed before Allison's cleaning and how Holston, the former sheriff, had sensed the impending madness. After a satisfying dinner, The pair retired to their separate guest rooms. Johns couldn't help but feel disappointed, not only by the wasted rooms, but also by the missed opportunity for companionship. Sensing Marnes felt the same way, he invited her to his room for a chat. The cozy room reflected the finer offerings of the upper gardens, and as they settled in, the familiar badges and titles faded away, leaving behind two people who could simply be. Johns opens up about her late husband, Donald, and the lasting impact he still has on her life. Marnes reveals that he, too, feels the presence of his friend's soul watching over him. Their intimate conversation creates a moment of genuine connection between them. Feeling the lateness of the hour, Johns realizes it's time to leave. She wipes away tears and seconds Marnes' earlier words about growing stronger in the face of challenges. Chapter 12. On the second day of their descent into the Down Deep, Johns and Marnes found themselves settling into the novel routine of the journey. The clank and thrum of the spiral staircase became a comforting rhythm, lulling them into a peaceful daydream. Johns lost herself in her thoughts, marveling at how the kinks in her knee seemed to vanish, and the walking stick became more of a companion than a crutch. As they passed through various floors, Johns found herself skipping the planned tours and lunches, completely absorbed in the experience. Reaching the 90th floor, they were technically already in the Down Deep. But Johns didn't truly feel it until they hit the 100th floor, marking a significant milestone in their descent. They took a break on a wide landing, indulging in a small loaf of fresh bread and taking in the bustling atmosphere of level 100, where people bartered and traded goods. They felt a sense of anonymity among the crowd, just two ordinary individuals caught up in the vibrant energy of the people around them. Moving through the lower floors, they encountered the farms and the water treatment plant, engulfed in the pungent smell of fertilizer and the hum of machinery. Johns found herself lost in thought about her conversation with Marnes the previous night and the idea of Donald living with her. Their descent became a meditative journey, where their physical surroundings blended with their introspective musings. Arriving at the gate of 140, they were greeted by a bustling crowd of workers in blue denim coveralls, signaling their arrival in the upper levels of mechanical. They patiently waited in line, vying with tired workers returning from their shifts. Once inside, they marveled at the size and complexity of the generator, the heart of the silo's power. The noise was deafening, but they were handed earmuffs, reducing the clamor to a dull hum. Moving through the narrow corridors of mechanical, Johns and Marnes followed a young boy with fiery orange hair who led them to the control room. There they encountered Juliet Nichols, a fiercely intelligent and hardworking woman. She was in the midst of her duties, fine-tuning and maintaining the massive machines with her skilled hands. Johns felt a mix of admiration and sympathy for the grueling task Juliet faced every day. As they conversed, Juliet expressed her frustration with the relentless demands for power and the strain it placed on the generators. She emphasized the importance of ensuring the sustainability of the silo, rather than thinking solely about their own lifetimes. Johns realized the gravity of the situation and contemplated ways to address the issue. They discussed the possibility of having it reduce their power consumption for maintenance, leading to a compromise that could alleviate the strain on the generators. Before they could delve further into their discussions, Juliet had to return to her duties. However, she agreed to meet Johns and Marnes later, once her shift ended. They left the control room, their minds filled with the weight of the responsibility that lay upon their shoulders. Arriving at the bunkhouse, they contemplated the magnitude of the task ahead, knowing that the fate of the silo's power rested in their hands. They anxiously awaited their meeting with Juliet, knowing that they needed her expertise and determination to ensure the survival of their subterranean civilization. But little did they know, their encounter with Juliet was just the beginning of a much larger journey, one that would shape the very foundation of their existence within the silo. Chapter 13. Marnes and Johns finish a noisy and meager meal in the bustling mess hall of mechanical. Regretting not having ear protection for the deafening noise, Johns is relieved when they finally exit the chaotic place. Following Knox's directions, they find their way to the bunk room, where a cot is prepared for Marnes and a private room is reserved for Johns. The two settle in the small room, discussing the stark differences in life down deep. But their conversation is interrupted when Juliet knocks on their door and enters. Surprised to find them sharing a room, Juliet reveals that recruits and visiting families often stay in the bunk room. The conversation takes a turn as Juliet asks about announcing a power holiday. Johns suggests that Juliet could start as the new sheriff and take advantage of the post-cleaning mood to implement the power holiday. However, Juliet is hesitant, claiming that she has no interest in the position and emphasizing the importance of her work in maintaining the machines of mechanical. But Johns believes that Juliet's lack of interest makes her the best candidate. Marnes agrees, praising Juliet's skills and observing that she notices subtle details that others miss. Despite Juliet's initial resistance, Johns and Marnes convince her to consider the role of sheriff. Juliet raises concerns about her ability to fulfill the responsibilities of the position. Johns assures her that she has the right attitude and disposition for the job. They discuss the importance of communication between the different levels of the silo and the need for someone like Juliet to be the link between mechanical and IT. They also address the issue of requisitions, with Johns assuring Juliet that if the diverted supplies were necessary, she'll ensure they become retroactively above board. Finally, Johns offers Juliet the chance to visit her father, who has been eagerly waiting to see her. After some consideration, Juliet agrees, stipulating that she needs time to sort out the generator and implement the power holiday. With Juliet on board, Johns and Marnes welcome her as their new sheriff. Juliet, still unsure of her abilities, humbly accepts their enthusiasm, but reminds them that she has much to learn. They shake hands, sealing the new partnership. Chapter 14. Johns and Marnes find themselves on a treacherous journey back to the up top of the silo during a power holiday. Each step is a struggle, draining their energy with every laborious ascent. As they make their way up the spiral staircase, the countless landings taunt them in the dim green glow of emergency lights. Their physical exhaustion mirrors their emotional weariness. Johns had hoped for a revitalizing adventure, but instead, she finds herself confronted by the ghosts of her past and questioning the purpose of her role in the silo. She realizes the stark divisions within their world. The up-top dwellers who take their privileges for granted, the people below who toil in the gardens and animal cages, and the workers in the deep who keep the machinery running. Amidst their climb, they come across a young girl reading alone on one of the landings. Unfazed by their presence, she remains lost in her book. This scene serves as a reminder of the isolation and detachment between the different levels of the silo. After days of exhausting climbing, they finally reach the mid-level deputy station, where they find rest and hospitality. Johns reflects on her conversations with Marnes, the stirring of old attractions, and the tender wounds of their pasts. Donald's name resurfaces, evoking grief for her long-lost husband and the solitude she has experienced for decades. She contemplates the emptiness of her life and the futility of her efforts in serving the silo. During the night, in the darkness of the deputy's office, Johns feels a presence enter her space. Marnes joins her on the convertible couch, and they find solace in each other's arms. It is a moment decades overdue, filled with tears, tenderness, and a renewed sense of connection. As they continue their ascent on the fourth day, Johns feels a mix of familiarity and dread as they approach IT. The flickering lights and the exemption IT enjoys during the power holiday cause discomfort and scrutiny from Johns. Inside, they encounter Bernard, who greets Johns coldly and dismisses Marnes. Bernard challenges Johns, accusing her of playing games with the power holiday and refusing to endorse Juliet as the new sheriff. Tempers flare between Johns and Bernard, and Marnes intervenes to prevent further escalation. Bernard's contempt resonates, but Johns stands her ground, reminding him of their shared history and calling. Despite Bernard's refusal to sign, another worker steps forward to support Johns. Bernard's final words drip with disdain as he dismisses them, emphasizing their age and their place in the silo. Chapter 15. As Johns and Marnes ascend the staircase toward home, their hands intertwine in a show of unabashed affection. Between the quiet floors of people seeking normalcy, they steal brief moments to check their belongings and take sips of each other's water, relishing in the sweetness of providing for one another. Johns wonders if returning home will change their newfound bond, or if their past ghosts will haunt them once again. Their conversation revolves around trivial matters, distracting Johns from the burning questions itching to escape her lips. The prospect of Jules returning to duty, their open case files, keeping it content, and dealing with Peter Billings's disappointment occupies their thoughts. but John senses a deeper connection emerging between her and Marnes, one that goes beyond their professional roles. She begins to suspect that Marnes had never accepted a promotion because of his feelings for her, knowing that a higher position would complicate their relationship. This realization fills her with a mixture of sadness and gratitude for his sacrifices. The pair nears their destination, only 20 floors away, and Johns' excitement intensifies. They discuss the newly appointed sheriff, who Johns believes represents the future of the silo, a forward-thinking, proactive individual. This newfound energy also fuels Johns' own aspirations for the upcoming elections. She envisions a better-run silo and feels a renewed vigor to fulfill her duties. However, a pivotal change occurs during their journey, the growth of a deep connection between Johns and Marnes. Johns wonders if this connection is the reason Marnes never accepted a promotion, as it would have complicated their dynamic. She squeezes his hand, overwhelmed by the sacrifices he has made silently, and vows to live up to the magnitude of his actions, regardless of what lies ahead. Approaching the nursery landing, Johns' bladder demands attention. Unable to hold it any longer, she admits the need to use the restroom. They decide to pay a visit to Juliet's father while they're there. In the empty waiting room, a nurse recognizes Johns as the mayor and grants them access to the facilities. Johns enters the barely lit bathroom, struggling to operate an unfamiliar lock. When she finally manages to relieve herself, the mixture of relief and exhaustion overwhelms her. Feeling weak and contemplating staying another night, she returns to the waiting room where Marnes anxiously awaits her. Concerned, Marnes notices something is wrong, but before Johns can respond, he raises his voice, attracting attention from the nurses and doctors. Panic sets in, and Johns attempts to calm him down, but her strength fails her. She loses consciousness, only to be met with the chaos of nurses and doctors examining her. As Johns fades in and out of consciousness, Marnes desperately tends to her, his tears mingling with his mustache. He clings to her, unable to comprehend what has occurred. Johns manages to slur her words, expressing her love for him, and in a miraculous effort, she reaches out for his hand. In a heartbreaking twist, Johns realizes the truth. Marnes had been carrying a canteen filled with poison meant for himself, but she inadvertently drank it when she asked for water. The revelation drowns the room in sorrow and leaves Johns slipping away, her secrets escaping her lips and her love for Marnes forever etched in his tear-streaked eyes. Chapter 16. The Power Holiday. The generator room is filled with an unusual silence and an eerie atmosphere as mechanics anxiously watch the first shift crew work. Amidst the crowd, Juliet stands focused on her device, a tall platform adorned with mirrors and slits that bounce light across the room. Her goal is to align the two machines on opposite ends of a steel rod with meticulous precision. The pressure weighs heavily on her as everything they are doing is unprecedented, planned in sleepless nights while the backup generator supplied power. Juliet and her team work tirelessly, aware that the generator needs to be up and running by morning. The refurbishment they have undertaken is a daunting task, with new gaskets, seals, and polished cylinder shafts requiring young shadows to venture deep into the heart of the machine. However, Juliet remains determined, reassuring herself that it is the right thing to do, and that any setbacks can be dealt with during the extended power holiday, better than an unforeseen catastrophe in the future. After securing the final bolts, Juliet joins Mark by the generator. The room is filled with an inexplicable silence, as if everyone is holding their breath, hoping for the success of their laborious efforts. With a nod from Juliet, the crowd starts wearing sound protection, preparing for the imminent restart. With trembling hands, Juliet initiates the starter motor, hoping for a smooth start. The process feels agonizingly slow, but Mark stands by, ready to abort if necessary. The generator starts running and joyous cheers erupt from the mechanics outside, replacing the tension in the room with a celebratory atmosphere. Juliet watches the celebration unfold, basking in the hum of a perfectly functioning generator, instilling her with renewed confidence. However, her euphoria is short-lived. Unbeknownst to her, a young porter hurries into the room with a pale face, conveying devastating news. The atmosphere shifts dramatically as fear and sadness settle among the mechanics, and Juliet finally becomes aware that something terrible has occurred. A great and powerful thing has fallen out of alignment. But it is not her generator that has caused this disturbance. Wool Part 3, Casting Off. Chapter 17, Sealed Doors. In an airlock filled with brightly colored pipes and plastic-wrapped shrouds, Juliet finds herself trapped between two sealed doors. The hiss of argon fills the air as pressure builds, constricting the plastic and pressing against her suit. As she contemplates her journey to this point, Juliet, a simple girl from Mechanical, wonders how she ended up in this place of uncertainty. She had always been content living in the depths of the earth, fixing broken things and blissfully unaware of the wider world outside. But now, standing in front of a forbidden door, she knows that her destiny lies beyond it, waiting to be discovered. Chapter 18. 2 days earlier, in the dimly lit holding cell, Juliet sat surrounded by steel bars, a world of hardship displayed on the wall screen. For the past few days, she had been trying to acquaint herself with the role of silo sheriff, studying the unimpressive view of the outside world and wondering what all the fuss was about. All she saw were lifeless hills and gray clouds, blanketed in relentless winds. To Juliet, it was an unwelcoming and useless wasteland, devoid of resources. The obsession the up-top dwellers had with the outside world baffled her. She found solace in the confines of the silo, appreciating the familiar darkness deep below. Lost in her thoughts, Juliet examined the folders scattered around her, remnants of unresolved cases that demanded her attention. She saw her role as sheriff akin to that of a mechanic, identifying faults and preventing breakdowns within the silo. Her sharply honed skills in observation and questioning made her adept at uncovering the truth. However, her focus kept returning to two closed-case folders, one belonging to a man she had loved and lost, and the other to the late Mayor Johns. These folders held secrets that haunted Juliet, more so because she couldn't bear to watch Deputy Marnes delve into the details of John's murder investigation. Suddenly, a stranger appeared at the bars of the cell, introducing himself as Bernard Holland. With his small stature and tidy appearance, Juliet couldn't help but feel a sense of unease in his presence. Bernard, now acting mayor, informed Juliet of his role and emphasized the importance of their collaboration. Suspicion clouded Juliet's mind as she realized that Bernard was the prime suspect in the mayor's death, and yet he remained on the wrong side of the bars. The encounter left Juliet shaken. As Bernard left, she noticed that her grip on the brass star, a symbol of her authority, had drawn blood in her palm. Determined and resolved, Juliet pinned the star to her chest, embracing her new role as sheriff. She understood that the silo was in desperate need of repair, just like the mechanical devices she once fixed. Contemplating the circumstances that led to the former sheriff's decision to leave the silo, Juliet felt a deep kinship with him. She empathized with the pain of losing something precious and understood the desire to explore the unknown. With newfound determination, she decided to delve further into Holston's case, seeking answers to his mysterious departure. Chapter 19. Nighttime Observations. As the clock strikes 10, Juliet can no longer bear the strain on her eyes. Exhausted, she powers down her computer and leaves her office. The growling of her stomach reminds her that she has missed yet another dinner. She makes her way to the cafeteria, noticing a lone figure sitting in the shadows. Having seen him the previous night, she decides to approach with caution. The mysterious man is engrossed in staring at the darkness outside, not once acknowledging the noise Juliet makes while passing behind him. Intrigued and suspicious, she grabs some food and joins him. The man seems fixated on the sight beyond the wall screen, claiming to see things others can't. Curiosity gets the better of Juliet as she watches the man, who uses charcoal and paper to capture whatever he sees in the night sky. He explains that he has been doing this for a long time, and that the stars move. The sight of a star flashes before them, mesmerizing Juliet, who has never seen one before. Lucas, the man, reveals that he collects data on the sky and hopes someone will continue his work after him. Introductions are made, and Juliet discovers that Lucas is a computer worker from the upper mids who spends his free time observing the night sky. He relies on insider information from a coworker to determine when the viewing conditions are optimal. Lucas's goal is to create a schematic of the stars, a task that he believes may take multiple lifetimes. Feeling a mix of guilt and fascination, Juliet bids Lucas farewell. But before leaving, they share a warm handshake. Juliet is struck by the connection she feels in that moment, even though she struggles to find the right words to express herself. Intrigued and haunted by this encounter, Juliet heads back to her quarters. She wonders about Lucas's obsession with the stars and the possibility of passing down his knowledge to future generations. As she lies in bed, the image of the night sky lingers in her mind, stirring a newfound curiosity within her. Little does she know that this chance encounter with Lucas will evolve into something much more significant, forever altering the course of her life in a silo. And so, the night falls, leaving Juliet with questions yet to be answered, and a burning desire to uncover the secrets hidden in the depths of the sky. Chapter 20. An Unexpected Discovery. As the morning sun peeks through the windows of the silo, Juliet arrives at her desk, bleary-eyed and sleep-deprived, after stealing only a few hours of rest. On her desk sits a package wrapped in recycled paper, tied with electrical ties. Smiling at the familiar touch, she reaches for her trusty multi-tool and carefully opens the package, preserving the ties just as Walker had taught her years ago. Inside, Juliet discovers a plastic box filled with Mama Jean's oatmeal and cornflower cookies. The sweet aroma evokes memories of home, and tears well up in her eyes. With gratitude, she imagines the people she will share the cookies with: Marnes, the cafeteria worker Pam, and others. Hidden amongst the crumbs, she finds a small data drive, a special treat baked by Scotty, her former shadow and now an IT genius. Excitement overtakes her as she connects the drive to her computer, realizing that it contains all the data from computers for the past 5 years. Scotty had automated the process to make her task easier. Juliet delves into the vast amount of information, overwhelmed by the knowledge at her fingertips. She knows that somewhere within this treasure trove of data lies the answer to the mystery of why Holston decided to go to cleaning. Each keystroke and record meticulously gathered by Scotty becomes a lifeline to unraveling the truth. As she immerses herself in the wealth of information, hours pass unnoticed. The cafeteria crew begins their morning routine, signaling the start of a new day. Juliet's ability to forego sleep grants her precious time to not only work on her cases, but also learn the ropes of her new role in the sheriff's office. However, a nagging worry tugs at her thoughts Deputy Marnes is unusually late. Driven by concern, Juliet abandons her desk and heads to Marnes' apartment. In the bustling hallway, she encounters curious glances from her fellow residents, their whispers lingering in the air. Determined, she hurries to Marnes' door, knocking with the hope of his voice bidding her entry. But silence greets her instead. As panic rises within her, Juliet pushes open the unlocked door, revealing the dark interior. The only light filters in from the hallway, casting an eerie glow. With a sinking feeling, she calls out Marnes' name, but her cries go unanswered. In a state of turmoil, she asks Gloria, a neighboring resident, to call for the nearest doctor while she rushes into the apartment. What greets Juliet's eyes is a horrifying sight. Marnes had hanged himself. Without hesitation, she and Gloria's husband release the belt from the doorknob, hastily freeing him from the deadly trap. They lay Marnes on the bed, hoping against hope for signs of life, but it is too late. In that moment, Juliet realizes the weight of her new position. The role she has taken on may be fraught with danger, and the grim reality of life within the silo becomes all too apparent. As she waits for the doctor's arrival, she wonders if this tragic event is an ominous sign of what lies ahead. And with those dark thoughts haunting her, Juliet contemplates the path she has chosen, her determination only growing stronger to uncover the truth hidden within the walls of the silo. Chapter 21. The Lonely Sky. As the day fades into evening, Juliet finds herself alone in her empty office at the top of the silo. She tries to distract herself with work, but the absence of her partner, Marnes, weighs heavily on her heart. Feeling a powerful sense of loneliness, she yearns for another encounter with the mysterious star hunter she met the night before. Lost in her thoughts, Juliet glances out of her office door, observing the clouds swirling across the distant wall screen. She contemplates whether the clouds are dense or light, hoping for a clear night to see the stars. Unable to focus on her tasks, she decides to run a global spell check on Holston's data to unearth any clues. While her computer processes the data, Juliet takes her meal to the cafeteria and sits near the wall screen. Lost in her gaze, Lucas, the star hunter, appears silently beside her. They sit in silence, both secretly craving companionship and understanding. Lucas finally breaks the silence and expresses his condolences for Marn's death. Their conversation turns to the clouds, and Lucas confesses that he knew they would hinder stargazing, yet he still came up to the cafeteria. Juliet finds solace in his honesty and playfully warns him about the legality of such actions according to the pact. They share a moment of laughter, a rare reprieve from the heavy atmosphere. As the conversation deepens, Lucas asks Juliet about the funeral arrangements. She reveals that the funeral will take place the following day. Lucas comments that he believes Marns and the mayor were secret lovers or very close friends. Juliet speculates that they kept their relationship hidden out of respect for the mayor's previous marriage. Their conversation drifts to love and the customs surrounding it. Lucas mentions the lottery and the tradition of asking a girl's father for permission to marry. Juliet questions the need for permission, expressing her belief in the freedom to love without such constraints. Curiosity turns towards Juliet, and Lucas asks if she is with anyone. She hesitates for a moment, considering revealing her secret, but instead, she lies and claims she has not yet found the right person. They share a genuine moment of laughter, and Juliet reveals her age as 36. As they sit in comfortable silence, enjoying each other's presence, Juliet acknowledges that it will not be a productive night for either of them. Just as she says this, her computer beeps, announcing the completion of its search through Holston's data. Chapter 22. Funeral for the Fallen. In the depths of the silo, Deputy Marns lies still, buried in the upper dirt farm. Juliet, the new sheriff, stands solemnly among the crowd. She reflects on the manila folders that hold the stories of the deceased, the ghosts of their lives trapped within. It has been a week of death in the silo, a week of loss and sorrow. As the priest and his shadow chant, the gathering mourns. Juliet accepts a ripe tomato, but even its flavor fails to fully register in her numb state. She observes the crowd, noticing the childless couples calculating their chances in the upcoming lottery. It dawns on her that death and chance are entwined, that life and death must coexist. The lowering of Marn's body into the soil serves as a reminder of the cycle of life. The deceased become nourishment for the plants that sustain the silo's occupants. The crowd tosses fruit into the hole, symbolizing the release of the departed's essence back into the earth. Juliet joins them, adding her tomato to the colorful cascade. Inside her office, she is surprised to find a stranger sitting at Marn's desk. The man introduces himself as Peter Billings, the newly sworn deputy. Meanwhile, Bernard, the interim mayor, emerges from the holding cell, holding a folder in his hand. It becomes apparent to Juliet that Bernard is seizing control and manipulating the situation to his advantage. Bernard announces a forgiveness moratorium, intending to sweep away the record of past misdemeanors. Juliet is skeptical, suspicious of Bernard's motives. She grits her teeth as he discards folders containing important information about cases. She realizes Bernard is running for mayor, using his position to further his own interests while undermining her authority. With Peter sent home, Juliet finally has a chance to delve into Holston's computer search history. She uncovers blocks of gibberish code, hidden within nested directories. The code appears to have consumed Holston's and his deceased wife Allison's attention for years. Unable to decipher it, Juliet senses something crucial hidden within it, something that may have led them to their untimely deaths. Overwhelmed with thoughts and investigating the past, Juliet comes across a suicide note left by Marns, haunted by guilt and a love lost to tragedy. Moved by his pain, she resolves to learn from her mistakes and be more attentive to her colleagues. Just as she prepares to leave her office, she receives a message from Scotty, her friend in it. It urges her to come immediately. Suspicious and cautious, Juliet gathers her belongings, briefly considering arming herself before ultimately leaving the gun behind. With Marn's empty chair as a silent reminder, she heads out, keys in hand, and embarks on a new, unexpected journey into the depths of the silo. Chapter 23. A Desperate Discovery. In the depths of the silo, Juliet races down the 34 levels to reach it. The department she knows Scotty, one of the techs, is working in. Her urgency matches her pounding heart as she darts past people and catches her breath on the landing outside it. When she enters, a young man in silver coveralls questions her presence, but she quickly asserts her authority as Sheriff Nichols and demands to see Scotty. Despite the gate denying her entry, Juliet's no-nonsense attitude wins her way in. The young man trembles with fear as Juliet proceeds, and she chuckles at the effectiveness of her argument. She navigates the halls until she finds Scotty's office and is relieved to see him. However, his behavior puzzles her, and he hands her a scroll of printout, afraid of what it contains. As Juliet inspects the printout, Scotty reveals the danger he faces and confesses to his role in obtaining the mysterious program that caused the previous 2 cleanings. He warns Juliet to leave and insists he cannot speak about the program's purpose. Intrigued and concerned, Juliet demands answers from Scotty, soothing him with a reminder of her authority as the law. Scotty reveals that the program does more than pass a simple image through from the sensors onto the wall screen. It can create entirely new views and display them. Juliet is shaken by this revelation and considers the implications. Her thoughts race back to Holston's wife, Allison, and how her curiosity may have led to her downfall. Juliet contemplates Holston's involvement and questions whether he knew about the fabricated views. Realizing she may have an advantage by having Scotty's assistance, Juliet decides to destroy the printout and take action. With the scroll tucked away, Juliet promises Scotty she will try to help him transfer back to mechanical. She exits the office, a sense of worry gnawing at her. The pieces of the puzzle are coming together, and Juliet realizes she is following a trail that Holston himself had pursued. The weight of her discoveries presses upon her as she contemplates her next move, determined to uncover the truth hidden behind the fabricated views. Chapter 24. Wires. Juliet arrived at her desk, feeling exhausted and sore from her late-night exploration of it, and the lack of sleep. The fear she had experienced upon discovering the box in the previous chapter lingered in her mind, raising questions and doubts. In the cafeteria, she could see the bodies of 2 lovers lying on a hill, whose fate reminded her of the dangerous path she was now pursuing. The fear in Scotty's eyes had made her realize that she needed to be more cautious. As she looked across her desk at her new deputy, Peter, she inquired about his past role in the Justice Department. Peter explained that he was a court assistant, growing up in the Mids. His father, a plumber, had passed away, and his mother worked in the nursery. Surprised by the connection, Juliet urged Peter to relay her greetings to his mother. Curiosity struck Juliet as she pondered the cost of sending paper notes versus wiring them electronically. Peter explained that wiring cost a quarter chip per character, but Juliet couldn't understand why sending information, weightless and effortless, wasn't practically free. Peter suggested that the expense might be due to servers, electricity, and maintenance, which made paper notes a cheaper alternative. However, Juliet couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps there was a more sinister reason behind the price disparity, one aimed at limiting communication and separating people. Their conversation was interrupted by yet another emergency alert on their screens. This time, the alert signified another suicide. Realizing the address was Scotty's office number, Juliet felt a crushing weight on her shoulders. Determined to investigate, she grabbed her belongings and rushed out of the office. Peter, attempting to help, mentioned a private wire he had received but struggled to convey his message. Ignoring his confusion, Juliet headed for the stairs, ready for the painful descent when Peter unexpectedly grabbed her arm with a firm grip. Stunned, she demanded an explanation. Peter reluctantly informed her that the computer declared her a suspect and that he was obliged to take her into custody. Shocked and disbelieving, Juliet found herself handcuffed by Peter, unable to comprehend the abrupt turn of events. She thought of Scotty, imagining him hanging from a noose, unable to shake the haunting image from her mind. Chapter 25. Disgraced. In the aftermath of her arrest, Juliet finds herself alone and stripped of her position as sheriff. Bernard, the it-head and aspiring mayor, confronts her with a list of charges, claiming her involvement in unauthorized activities and threatening a member of the silo. Juliet vehemently denies these accusations, arguing that she was summoned by one of Bernard's workers and had every right to be where she was. She suspects that Bernard orchestrated the events to fulfill his own ambitions. Bernard tries to placate Juliet, assuring her that he doesn't want her gone permanently, but believes she is better suited for her old job in mechanical. He tells her that she will be allowed to gather her belongings and return to her previous position as long as she reports her progress to his deputies. Juliet, seething with anger, refrains from violence, but the desire to punch Bernard in the face lingers in her mind. As Juliet begins her journey back to Mechanical, she contemplates the events of the past week. She feels responsible for the chaos that has unfolded in the silo, blaming herself for leaving her old job and accepting the role of sheriff. Scotty, the young worker who committed suicide, weighs heavily on her conscience. She questions the circumstances surrounding his death, believing there is more to the story than meets the eye. Despite her shame, Juliet is greeted warmly by her friends upon her return to Mechanical. They offer their support and understanding, reminding her that she is valued and missed. Overwhelmed by their kindness, Juliet retreats to her room, where she discovers numerous wires slipped under her door. These messages, meant to comfort her during her return, serve as reminders of the friendships she has within the silo. Amidst the uplifting messages, Juliet receives a wire from Scotty, the final message he sent before his death. In the wire, Scotty explains that he lied about deleting certain files and reveals the truth behind a program meant for viewing on a massive screen. He urges Juliet to transfer him back to Mechanical, warning her of the dangers lurking in it. Juliet, filled with grief and determination, copies the wire and deletes the message, not wanting to leave any trace of their conversation. Chapter 26: The Revelation. In the dimly lit hallway, the distinctive scent of vaporized solder lingers as Juliet approaches Walker's electronics workshop. Worried, she wonders if she might find him asleep on his cot. As she knocks and enters, she is met with the sight of Walker hunched over his workbench, smoke curling from his soldering iron. Piles of electronic parts surround him, testaments to his relentless work. Walker, ecstatic to see her, puts down his tools and the magnifying lens resting on his head. They exchange warm greetings and a hug, reminiscing about the old days. Juliet, however, has a more pressing matter on her mind. She reveals her purpose for visiting Walker. She needs his assistance in unraveling the mystery surrounding Scotty's death. She explains her doubt that Scotty took his own life and shares the wire he had sent her before his untimely demise. Walker reads the wire carefully and realizes that Scotty's message relates to pixel density and the small screen. As they analyze the note further, they come across a reference to a tape and a joke. Juliet recalls a faulty heat tape that had been sent to her, and the connection starts to form. Juliet divulges her belief that Scotty's death was not an isolated incident. She suspects a larger conspiracy, one that involves the manipulation of the very technology they rely on for survival. The faulty heat tape and mysterious seals indicate deliberate sabotage, feeding her suspicion that the powers that be are systematically eliminating anyone with mechanical knowledge. With the knowledge that collaborative efforts are discouraged, Juliet makes a startling revelation to Walker. She believes they are all being silenced, one by one. This theory explains the secrecy surrounding the supply chains and the lengths to which they go to maintain control. As the hiss of the air compressor fills the room, Juliet leans in closer, her voice filled with conviction. She declares that it's not just Scotty they've killed. It's everyone who poses a threat to their power. They must uncover the truth and expose the darkness that looms within the confines of their isolated underground world. Their determination burns bright as they stare into each other's eyes, knowing that the search for answers will be dangerous. But they are willing to risk it all, for the truth is a flame that cannot be extinguished. Chapter 27: Scrubbed Away. Juliet returns to work, haunted by her encounter with Walker. As she enters the dispatch, the techs applaud half-heartedly, while Knox just gives her a gruff glare from the corner. Juliet is lost in thought, unable to process the job queue before her. Images of Scotty's lifeless body and the tragic love between Johns and Marnes weigh heavily on her mind. She contemplates rallying a group of mechanics to rebel against the corrupt silo, but the idea seems comical. Determined to distract herself, Juliet heads to the pump room. Carol, a fellow worker, greets her with a wave. Together, they begin their tasks repairing the pumps. As Juliet works, her thoughts wander to the silo's origin, questioning the stories told by the priests. She recalls the skyline and the images in children's books, believing they hold clues to the world outside. This unorthodox thinking makes her realize that it controls everything within the silo, keeping them trapped. Lost in thought, Juliet contemplates her plan to expose the truth to others by using the repairs as a cover. She sees an opportunity to unite the silo's inhabitants and fix the broken system. Energized by her newfound purpose, she envisions a list of parts needed for her plan. Working tirelessly for 2 shifts, Juliet completes her tasks and heads to the mess hall. However, she encounters Knox and Deputy Hank in the hallway. Their expressions tell her that something terrible has happened. Panicked, she fears for her father's safety. But to her surprise, Hank reveals that Juliet is being arrested for grave crimes against the silo. Confusion fills her, and she looks to Knox for answers. He seems torn and unable to speak. Before she can comprehend the situation, Hank places metal bands on her wrists, informing her that she will be judged according to the pact. Despite her shackles, she finds solace in accepting her fate and tells Knox and Hank that everything will be all right. They, too, are filled with sorrow. The chapter closes with Juliet's resolve to keep her head held high as she faces the consequences of her supposed crimes. Chapter 28. The Climb. As the days of climbing back upwards wear on, Juliet feels numb and burdened by the lives lost, some due to her actions. Settling into her cell at the MIDS deputy station, Juliet waits for the arrival of Deputy Marsh to accompany her on the final leg of her journey. Without her watch, confiscated by Hank, Juliet anxiously checks her bare wrist, longing to know the time. Marsh informs her that she has a visitor, and Juliet's curiosity is piqued. Lucas appears on the other side of the bars, and Juliet is taken aback by his presence. Hoping to protect him from the harsh reality of her situation, she insists he should not have come. Lucas reveals that they are fighting against her arrest, collecting signatures in her support. Juliet, however, believes their efforts will be in vain and advises Lucas to let go and find someone else. The burden of her impending fate weighs heavily on them both. With Lucas gone, Juliet spends the night on a cold cot, reflecting on the lives she has inadvertently harmed. The next day, she completes the final climb and finds herself in a familiar cell, facing Peter Billings and her old desk. Charges of conspiracy are laid against her, citing evidence found on a damaged data drive. Juliet remains detached, knowing her fate has already been decided. As Juliet contemplates her impending cleaning, a small tornado emerges on the flats, symbolizing the destructive cycle of the cleaners. Bernard remains absent, leaving Juliet uncertain about his motives. Pam delivers her favorite breakfast, accompanied by heartfelt notes from her friends in mechanical. Walker's note, in particular, puzzles her. It reads, "No fear. Now is for laughing. The truth is a joke, and they're good in supply." As she is being prepared and put into the suit for cleaning, she decides with absolute certainty that she will not clean. She reflects on the futility of her suit's design and the pointlessness of her sacrifice. When the helmet is placed on her head, the room fills with the hissing sound of argon gas, signaling that her time has come. With determination, Juliet steps outside, intent on leaving the world on her own terms. As the doors part, she sets foot in the outside world for the first time, even if it is through the limited view of her helmet's small glass panel. The chapter ends with Juliet realizing the scope of her view and the significance of stepping out into the unknown. Chapter 29. The Delusions Shattered. Bernard, the head of IT and mayor, sat alone in the cafeteria, observing the cleaners through the windows. His techs were preparing for the cleaning process in Peter's office, their superstitions and fears fueling their actions. Bernard enjoyed this solitary moment, studying the cleaners' reactions as they emerged from the silo and encountered the outside world for the first time. He had seen various responses over the years, from desperate pleas to futile attempts to interact with the surroundings, all stemming from the illusion that their false hopes could be fulfilled. Unlike Mayor Johns, who could never bear to witness the cleaners' experiences, Bernard cherished the transformations and delusions that his predecessors had perfected. He sipped his fruit juice and watched as Juliet Nichols emerged from the silo, only to find that the sensors were still grimy. Bernard expected her to clean them, as every other cleaner had done before. However, to his astonishment, Juliet ignored the dirty sensors and walked away, climbing the hill and disappearing from sight. Bernard's shock soon turned into anger and worry. He rushed downstairs, yelling at his techs and throwing his juice cup at them. Determined to find out what had gone wrong, he made his way to the server room, surrounded by the hum of machines keeping the data intact. Bernard's fear intensified as he realized that he had let Juliet out of his sight, violating one of his primary responsibilities. He cursed the greasy mechanics in the mechanical department, blaming them for the flawed design of the vent control. The contrast between the pristine IT room and the unclean mechanics only fueled his anger. Bernard finally reached the server and opened it, revealing a cloth case containing a headset. He put it on, hoping to regain control of the situation. He reassured himself that he could maintain the illusion of stasis, control people's fear of change, and ensure that Peter Billings remained loyal. However, the fear within him grew as he plugged in the headset, knowing that he had to address the potential consequences of Juliet's actions. Silo 1. This is Silo 18. We might have a slight problem over here. As the tense silence hung in the air, Bernard began to comprehend the enormity of the situation. The delusions he had fostered were shattered, and the consequences of his oversight loomed over him. What would be the repercussions of Juliet's defiance? The future seemed uncertain, fueling Bernard's growing anxiety as he awaited a response from Silo 1. Wool for the Unraveling. Chapter 30. The Tragic History of Romeus and Juliet. In the depths of the silo, young Juliet embarks on a journey with her parents. Riding on her father's shoulders, she experiences the long descent through the stairs, her small legs bouncing along as they make their way deeper into the darkness. The sound of footsteps and rust dust fill the air around them, lulling Juliet to sleep as they continued their descent. With her parents by her side, Juliet takes her first steps onto the 100th landing. The large painted number, 100, captures her attention, its two circles resembling wide open eyes peering out into the world. Her father tells her how smart she is, and she follows her mother into the bustling bazaar. The bazaar is filled with people, their voices blending into a happy noise that fills the air. Juliet clings to her father, afraid of getting lost in the crowd. They navigate through the stalls, her mother bartering for their lunch. Her father even manages to let her touch a soft rabbit through a fence. The bazaar seems endless, with narrower passages branching off, but Juliet is not allowed to explore them. Finally, they reach a set of square steps, a new sight for young Juliet. Her father exchanges chits, and they pass through a gate where a man with a funny hat makes a silly face at her. Laughing, she follows her parents to a spot where they spread a sheet on a wide bench. Juliet's excitement reaches its peak as she watches jugglers throwing balls and hoops in the air, trying to count them but failing. Eventually fatigued, she falls asleep and dreams of flying through the silo surrounded by colorful balls and hoops. She awakens to the sound of whistles and applause, her parents standing and cheering. The play has ended, and her parents carry her down to where the performers are receiving praise. Her parents request the lady's autograph, who is also called Juliet, and she presents Juliet with a small book of papers greatly treasured by the young girl. The lady's kind touch on her cheek causes Juliet to trust her, and she feels a deep understanding as she gazes at her own name written repeatedly within the pages. Chapter 31. A Glooming Peace. Lucas wakes up on the morning of a cleaning day, contemplating whether to go to work or not. Feeling overwhelmed by grief, he sits at the foot of his bed, caressing a star chart. This star chart is special, as it holds the outline of a 5-pointed star, reminiscent of a sheriff's badge that he drew while talking to Juliet. Lucas recalls the magical quality of Juliet's voice and presence and the unexpected joy she brought into his mundane life. However, 2 nights ago, Juliet tried to distance herself from Lucas, turning away from him in her cell. Lucas has spent the night crying for her, feeling sick at the thought of her cleaning outside the safety of the silo. He wonders if his loss of appetite is due to the realization that he might never see her again. Deciding to distract himself, Lucas contemplates going to work in the server room, but his mind is blank and his body feels numb. He lacks the motivation to do anything. As he stands there, contemplating staying still for the rest of his life, a sense of despair creeps over him. However, a glimmer of hope emerges when Lucas sees a porter rushing past, looking worried. The commotion and whispers in the crowd indicate that something has happened during the cleaning. Lucas joins the flow of people heading up in the silo and encounters Deputy Marsh, who is holding a small cardboard box and a squawking radio. Lucas anxiously questions Deputy Marsh about the cleaning, hoping for news about Juliet. Marsh reveals that the cleaning did happen, but Juliet did not clean. Instead, she wandered over the hills, disappearing from sight. Lucas feels a surge of joy and relief, realizing that she is potentially still alive. He offers to take the box of Juliet's belongings to Bernard, the mayor, as he is going to the same level. Marsh agrees, and Lucas takes the box, promising to guard it with his life. As he ascends the stairs, Lucas is filled with a renewed sense of purpose and determination. With the weight of Juliet's belongings nestled close to his heart, Lucas hurries up the stairs, ready to fulfill his mission and protect the precious belongings of the woman who meant so much to him. Chapter 32. The Great Unknown. In the midst of his work, Walker hears the skittering footsteps of the newest porter, a young boy named Samson. Intrigued by the promise of big news, Walker calls out to him. Samson, with a mischievous smile, reveals that cleaning duties have been refused. This revelation is unprecedented and electrifying. As Walker processes this information, his thoughts drift to Juliet. He wonders if she received his note, if it offered some solace in the face of her decision to refuse cleaning. The news fills him with a mixture of fear and pride for Juliet's audacity. Caught in contemplation, Walker gazes outside his doorway, where the world beyond beckons. A hermit, he has trouble leaving his apartment, but he decides to take a leap of faith to step out into the unknown. With a deep breath, Walker propels himself forward. The steel walls of his confined world give way to the vast expanse of possibilities. Chapter 33. Is there no pity sitting in the clouds? As the heavy steel doors of the silo belch with an angry hiss, Juliet Nichols finds herself on the precipice of escape. The fire roars behind her, urging her to move forward. With a burst of determination, she squeezes through the narrow gap in the doors, emerging outside in a world she's only seen through sensors. Juliet stands on a sloping ramp. Instead of seeing a desolate wasteland, she is beneath a sky filled with clouds and unseen stars. It's a surreal sight, as if she's been dropped into a storybook where animals talk and children fly. The temptation to believe in the illusion overwhelms her. The vivid colors, the soft grasses that aren't real, all entice her. But she reminds herself that it's a lie. Her reality is the world hidden beneath the surface, the ugliness she's always known. Remembering Walker's note urging her not to be afraid, she tears off a scrubbing pad and rubs it against her suit. To her surprise, the heat tape doesn't fail like IT's materials, it withstands her actions. She realizes that the people of Supply, thanks to Walker's efforts, had replaced IT's defective heat tape with ones that were designed to last. All of a sudden, she understands Walker's note. They are good in Supply. As she walks up and crests the hill, Juliet realizes the incomplete nature of IT's deceit. The distant city, projected with grandeur, begins to reveal its crumbling facade. She sees through the bottom levels of the buildings, the lack of foundations on unfamiliar structures suspended in the air. The world around her, both real and unreal, reminds her of her impending death and her resolve to remove herself from sight, away from those who might gloat or mourn. Descending the hill, she observes the divide between two worlds. The painted green hills and the dusty, dead landscape below lay before her. In her walk towards the city, she notices a pattern of circular hills, each spooned out protected by the rising earth. But she's struck with confusion when she sees another sensor tower and the remains of a dead cleaner. It seems as if she's retracing her steps, unsure of which direction she's truly heading. Bewildered and lost, Juliet wonders if she's succumbing to noxious fumes or if the air has breached her suit. But her determination remains. She continues walking towards the city, the illusion of its gleaming tops and blue skies still intact. The towers and dunes she encounters are not her own, a revelation that ignites her curiosity about what lies beyond her familiar landscape. With a mix of trepidation and fascination, Juliet moves forward, eager to uncover the secrets hidden beyond the veil of lies and deception. Chapter 34. In the dimly lit control room of the water treatment plant on level 38, Lucas holds a small box close to his chest. He had obtained the box through secretive means, defying his boss and deceiving Deputy Marsh. Now, as he peels open the flaps of the box, guilt washes over him. These are Juliet's belongings, a reminder of her tragic fate. Despite the guilt, Lucas decides to honor Juliet by examining her possessions. He finds stacks of vacation vouchers and expired meal cards, along with her silver sheriff's ID badge. Lucas is moved by the sight of her recent photo on the badge, remembering how she used to braid her hair while working diligently. Adding to his collection, Lucas swaps his own multi-tool for the new one he found in the box. He cherishes this reminder of her, while his own tool will likely be discarded or given away. However, Lucas's exploration is interrupted by approaching footsteps and laughter, causing him to freeze in fear of being caught. Once the coast is clear, Lucas resumes his search. He discovers an antique wooden box containing a mysterious wedding ring, likely belonging to a relative, and a delicate watch with a tiny ticking hand. Unable to resist, he pockets the watch and ring, feeling a mix of excitement and paranoia. The heat of the computer and the tension in the room intensify as Lucas continues his exploration. He finds a notepad filled with crossed-out to-do lists and a thick manual labeled Main Generator Control Room Operation Manual. The manual contains diagrams and notes, showcasing Juliet's expertise, and the words Juliet repeated over and over. To Lucas's amazement, he discovers that the rear of the manual is actually the front, revealing the title, The Tragic History of Romeo and Juliet, a familiar play. Overwhelmed by the significance of his findings, Lucas packs everything back into the box and prepares to leave the room, aware that he is being watched by blinking lights. As Lucas walks away, he reflects on his actions, questioning what he was thinking. Yet, with the box securely tucked under his arm and Juliet's watch, ring, and ID badge close to his heart, he knows he must protect her memory and her story, no matter the consequences. Chapter 35. In a desolate wasteland strewn with bodies, Juliet stumbles upon a mass grave. These corpses are not from her own silo. They are the remains of others who had lived and died in a world so close to her own. The realization of these lost lives overwhelms her as she traverses through the jumbled mass, climbing over bodies to reach the sensor tower. As she nears the ramp leading down to another silo, she notices bodies piled up around the sealed steel airlock door. These unfortunate souls had desperately tried to get back inside. With her impending death looming over her, Juliet feels a strange mix of fear and curiosity. Although she knows she too will meet the same fate, she pushes forward, driven by an unquenchable thirst for discovery. Juliet maneuvers through the sea of writhing bodies, using them as stepping stones towards the cracked doors. In her struggle to enter, her helmet becomes wedged between the steel jaws, trapping her in a state of semi-dangling. Panic sets in, but with sheer determination, she manages to free herself. Though exhausted and bewildered, she is determined to push forward, even as her own mortality taunts her. Finally, Juliet makes it through the doors into a burnt room that eerily resembles the one she left behind. She questions her own existence, wondering if she's already dead, caught in the realm of ghosts. However, a glimpse into the inner silo reveals that it is different from her own. She pounds on the glass, hoping for someone to hear her plea, but silence greets her instead. Realizing she needs air, Juliet focuses her attention on the wheel locks of the sealed door. She tries to turn the wheel, but it remains stubbornly immovable. Doubt creeps in as she questions her ability to free herself. However, her memory serves her well, recalling Marnes's lessons on how the inner door unlocked after the cleansing fire. Armed with this knowledge, Juliet refuses to give up. Surveying her surroundings, she spots a pipe that leads to the vents delivering argon. With determination in her eyes, she wrenches the weakened pipe from the vent. Holding the pipe tightly, she works it back and forth, bending and straining until it snaps. Now armed with a tool, Juliet wedges the pipe through the wheel lock and uses it as leverage, bouncing her weight in a jerking motion, desperately trying to free the bolt. With a deafening clang, the wheel budges, and Juliet's efforts are rewarded. The door begins to open, breathing new life into her lungs. She collapses to the floor, overwhelmed by the triumph of her perseverance. And as she rises, her spirit reignited, she knows that she has defied death itself and embraced the possibility of a new future. With the door ajar, Juliet's first breath of fresh air fills her with a renewed sense of hope and purpose. She knows that she is not alone in this desolate world, and her determination to uncover the mysteries of the silo only grows stronger. Chapter 36. In the wide entrance hall of Mechanical, Walker finds himself surrounded by young shadows, full of whispers and secrets. Inside the mess hall, he takes refuge amidst the familiar faces, but an argument erupts among the men and women of Mechanical. The discussion revolves around the mysterious suits and the fate of those sent out into the desolate outside world. Walker musters the courage to speak. He interrupts the heated debate, drawing the attention of his comrades. They are astonished to see him among them, as he is known as the reclusive electrical man who dwells in a cave. Walker reveals that Jules had shared a theory about the suits and IT with him. She believed that the breakdown of the heat tape was no accident. Using the favors and connections he had accumulated over the years, Walker conspires with Supply to sabotage IT's supply chain. He ensures that the suits they receive are of inferior quality. Walker confesses that the suits were intentionally designed to fail, not because the outside world is safe, but to keep the inhabitants suppressed within the silo. Despite Walker's efforts, Jules was taken by IT, and her fate remains unknown. The revelation sparks a passionate debate among the group, with conflicting views on Jules' condition. Amidst the chaos, Walker realizes that this is the beginning of an uprising. He sees the fire in their eyes, the anger boiling within them, and he understands that they are on the brink of rebellion. The room falls silent as he utters the words, feeling the weight of the impending revolution. Walker knows that this is the moment everything changes, and the rebellion against the oppressive rulers of the silo begins to take shape. And so, in the mess hall of Mechanical, amidst the clamor and tension, Walker plants the seed of resistance, igniting a flame within the hearts of his comrades. The stage is set for a battle that will push the limits of their courage as they fight to uncover the truth and reclaim their freedom from the shadows that have governed their lives for far too long. The uprising has begun. Chapter 37. Lucas arrives at the IT department, breathless and clutching a small box. He had just broken several laws to acquire it, and the adrenaline still lingers in his mouth. As he enters, he notices the chaos unfolding. Bernard, the head of IT, is yelling at his staff, while Sims, the head of IT security, berates his own men. Caught in the middle, Lucas tries to speak to Bernard, but is interrupted by his boss's fixation on the box in his hands. Ignoring Lucas's explanations, Bernard opens the box to find vacation chits, which he dismisses with disgust. The tension in the room is palpable as Bernard and Sims continue to search through the box's contents, hoping to find a clue or explanation as to how Juliet survived outside. Lucas, feeling guilty and anxious, suddenly understands Bernard's anger. He realizes that Bernard is looking for an answer, desperate to understand why someone could succeed against all odds. Sims finds a notebook and begins flipping through its pages, suggesting that they need to thoroughly examine it for any signs of collusion. Meanwhile, Lucas discovers that the box actually opens with a sliding lid. Bernard seems uninterested and tosses it aside, but Sims recognizes its value as an antique and decides to keep it. The tense atmosphere continues to build, and Bernard dismisses Sims, leaving Lucas alone with him. As they sift through the remaining contents of the box, Lucas slowly realizes the burden of responsibility that Bernard carries as the interim mayor. Bernard shares his worry about one person's hubris causing the downfall of the silo and expresses the need for a trustworthy shadow to ensure the survival of the community. Bernard reveals that he considers Lucas a friend, someone he trusts, and asks Lucas to be his shadow. Lucas is caught off guard, but accepts the responsibility, unsure of the full implications of this new role. Chapter 38. In the desolate darkness, Juliet fights to seal the inner airlock door, escaping the horrors outside. With the stale air in her suit dwindling, she stumbles blindly through the pitch-black hallway, desperate to find safety within the mysterious silo. Every step weighs on her, as if the toxic wind outside were clawing at her back. Guided by her instinctive sense of direction, Juliet finds solace in the touch of metal bars, assuring her that she's navigating in the right direction. Her oxygen-deprived mind races, wondering if she could find a breath of clean air within the silo, or if it would be just as toxic as the outside world. Despite her exhaustion, she pushes on, clinging to hope. Suddenly, Juliet trips over a heap of bodies, their spongy flesh feeling chillingly alive beneath her. Repulsed yet resolute, she crawls over the corpses, her body recoiling at the sensation. She moves forward, her only thought being to flee from the darkness and find a flicker of light. Finally, she reaches a door, jamming her body against it to keep it closed. The feeble glow from the stairwell radiates through the crack, revealing her surroundings. But her time is running out, her air supply dwindling rapidly. With a defiant spirit, Juliet contemplates lying down and embracing her fate, but her curiosity urges her onward. Swimming through the obstacles of tables and chairs, Juliet fights to distance herself from the poisonous air, her body growing weaker by the second. She reaches the cafeteria, a dim green glow guiding her steps, and desperately seeks something to cleanse herself. The sink and the hose run dry, leaving her with a last resort the walk-in freezer. Inside the freezer, her hope falters as she finds no sign of cold. Yet, she discovers vats of soup and recklessly douses herself with it, willing to try anything to purify her suit. The darkness closes in, her vision fades, and her determination wavers. Lying on the floor, on the edge of death, Juliet contemplates removing her helmet. With trembling hands, she reaches for the latch, finally managing to release the helmet, gasping for air tainted with the putrid stench of decay. Overwhelmed, she reaches, but finds no relief. Her body feels like it's burning, but she musters the strength to crawl away from the soup-filled walk-in. Breathing painfully, Juliet makes her way towards the stairwell, drawn to the faint green glow in the distance. The air, though still foul, carries the breath of life. Against all odds, she laughs with madness, sensing the impossible. She is still alive, clinging to the precious threads of existence in the depths of the silo. Chapter 39. Knox, a man accustomed to emergencies in the underground silo of Mechanical, now faces a different kind of crisis. The people of Mechanical are preparing to revolt against IT, the mysterious ruling authority. With chaos brewing, Knox takes charge and organizes a plan to seize control of supply, a vital manufacturing floor. He selects a small team to accompany him, cautioning them to be discreet and avoid drawing attention from possible informants. Meanwhile, Knox assigns Jenkins, his trusted subordinate, to secure Mechanical. He instructs Jenkins to stockpile food, water, and weapons while also ensuring the safety of their underground dwelling. Understanding the potential consequences if their actions are discovered, Jenkins pledges to carry out the tasks diligently. As Knox and his team ascend the stairwell, carrying heavy loads of supplies, they encounter curious onlookers fascinated by the news of Juliet's disappearance. Despite the physical exhaustion, Knox presses on, eager to reach Supply as quickly as possible. Upon arriving at Supply, their reception is far from welcoming. McLean, the head of Supply, confronts Knox with skepticism and anger. However, Knox manages to convince her to have a private conversation. Inside Supply, Knox observes a tense atmosphere as the workers eye his team suspiciously. To McLean's surprise, instead of begging for forgiveness, Knox delivers a passionate speech, exposing the lies and deception that IT has perpetuated within the silo. He urges the workers of Supply to see the uprising has already begun, to join the cause and bring order to their lives. Though McLean initially appears unconvinced, she asks the workers of Supply to voice their opinion. In a moment of revelation, the crowd erupts with angry war cries, their voices overpowering Knox's own supporters in an overwhelming display of unity. Chapter 40. As Lucas follows Bernard through the labyrinthine halls of IT, he can't help but feel the weight of hidden eyes watching their every move. It seems Bernard has already decided that Lucas will be his shadow, even though Lucas hasn't fully accepted the offer. The tension builds as they approach the server room, the nervous techs scattering like startled insects. Bernard opens up about his plans, explaining that he needs someone who can step in and take over if something were to happen to him. Lucas's confusion mounts as Bernard mentions his will and the need to change his executor, Sims. Before Lucas can fully comprehend the situation, they enter the heavily fortified server room, shutting the door behind them. In the heart of the server room, Bernard reveals a hidden key that opens a cabinet holding the true heart of the silo. Lucas follows Bernard to the back of the server room, where Bernard unlocks a machine Lucas has never seen before. The machine appears to have been stripped down over the years, leaving only an empty shell. With a sudden shift in Bernard's demeanor, he instructs Lucas to lock the back of the machine, and then proceeds to pry open the metal slats of the floor. Lucas's mind races as he starts descending down a ladder into an unknown space. As they step into the room, Lucas realizes that the world he once knew pales in comparison to the wonders before him. Chapter 41. Juliet, soup-slathered helmet discarded, is drawn to a pale green glow in the darkness. As her senses return, she realizes that her helmet had been distorting her vision. The stench of her drenched suit follows her, and she hurries towards the stairwell, feeling an itch on her skin and a burning sensation in her throat. Desperate to escape the toxic air, she removes her bulky, fetid outfit with a knife. Now barefoot, she descends the stairs, feeling the coolness of the steel against her tingling skin. On level 13, Juliet hesitates. She wonders if the layout is the same as her own silo, and feels a sense of familiarity. Though it is dark and stagnant, she shouts out for help, imagining herself as a child running through these halls. On level 14, she searches through offices and workrooms, but finds no coveralls. She settles for a purple tablecloth to cover herself. Forming a makeshift belt and headscarf, Juliet feels a sense of accomplishment at solving one problem. Descending to level 15, Juliet's exhaustion catches up to her. She rests on the landing, realizing her weariness. Rather than exploring for a bed, she decides to sleep on the steel grating, using the tablecloth for warmth. Drifting off to sleep, she briefly fears never waking up, joining the other lifeless residents of this strange place. Chapter 42. In the dimly lit room of the silo, Knox, a strong and bearded man, sat at a table facing McLean, the small but imposing woman who held control over the silo's supplies and fabrication. They were discussing their plans, their voices carrying the weight of the forbidden words they spoke, uprising, setting things right. As they looked over the blueprint stretched out before them, Knox noticed the age in McLean's eyes, the wrinkles etched with years of hardship. Knox, realizing his own youth in her presence, tried to demonstrate his wisdom and determination. McLean, knowing the divisions within the silo, shared her insights. She believed that while the mids, who aspired upward without true understanding, might be reluctant allies, the toppers, who lived inside of those who had been lied to, would be more inclined to join their cause. As they worked out the details, Knox realized how McLean's presence inspired loyalty among her people, just as his own presence instilled fear. They agreed on the plan, a power outage followed by a goodwill mission led by McLean, which Knox would follow with the rest of their group. Chapter 43. Juliet descended further into the silo, her senses awakening to the scent that filled the air, the rich, rotting stench of the dirt farms. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, spurring her on. As she reached floor 28, the smell grew overwhelming. This was the smell of death, of funerals, of soil turned over. Stopping on floor 30, the hydroponic farms, Juliet tried the doors, but they were locked and the darkness inside concealed the mysteries within. Venturing towards the sound of a faint whir, she entered cautiously, leaving her only tool, a knife, as a makeshift doorstop. The green emergency lights did little to alleviate the oppressive darkness, but the sound of movement, something other than herself, gave her a sense of relief. It meant she wasn't alone. Pipes dangled like ropes, devoid of the plants they once nurtured. But there was water, stale and brackish, offering her some respite. She drank until her thirst was quenched, her hope rekindled by this newfound resource. Before leaving, Juliet fashioned a rudimentary thermos from a section of pipe to carry some water with her. She realized that with water, she might have a chance at survival, maybe even enough time to uncover the secrets of the silo. She retrieved her knife and descended further, arriving at floor 30 for the source of the smell. As she approached the door, she heard the whirring sound grow louder. Opening the door, she peered into the dimly lit farm, lush vegetation reaching out towards her. Juliet cautiously explored the farm, feeling the leaves brushing against her arms. The scent of rot filled the air, the sweet decay of fruits and vegetables. And then she heard the click of a door closing. Darkness descended, plunging her into uncertainty. She could hear her own heartbeat, her breathing, and the whirring of the pump. Fear consumed her. but she reminded herself that the darkness held no ghosts, only the unknown. Suddenly, an arm reached over her shoulder, startling her. In her panic, she lashed out, only to realize that she had mistaken the turnstile for an intruder. Embarrassed, she made her way through and was relieved to see the light again. As she exited the farm, Juliet reached for her knife and thermos. Both were missing. Panic surged through her veins. Had they fallen or been taken? Her heart raced, and then she heard something footsteps, running, echoing in the stairwell below her. Chapter 44. In supply, the forbidden weapons are assembled, their barrels still radiating warmth from their recent manufacturing. Knox gingerly handles one of the guns. It is the first time he has ever held such a deadly device, understanding why they are prohibited. He realizes killing should require more than mere pointing and pulling a trigger. A supply worker arrives with a tub filled with the heavy cylinders that serve as ammunition. Knox takes one and questions its safety. The worker explains the force that needs to be applied to activate it before instructing everyone to wrap them up inconspicuously. The plan is for the slower climbers to go first, followed by the stronger climbers. They hope to converge on level 34 simultaneously, making their intentions clear. He still hopes violence can be avoided, but senses the growing anger and willingness among the group to take lives if necessary. Chapter 45. Juliet, standing alone in the stairwell, is struck by a sudden realization. There are other people living in the silo with her. She desperately chases after the retreating footsteps, unable to shout for them to stop. The fear of never finding them or being found by a group with malicious intentions consumes her. With her knife in their possession, Juliet contemplates the dangerous possibilities. Navigating through the levels with swift agility, Juliet's adrenaline-fueled descent brings her closer to the fleeing footsteps. Finally, she hears a door slam, and upon reaching the door on level 34, she struggles to open it. With a forceful yank, the door flies open, bathing the surroundings in blinding light. Overwhelmed by the illumination, she enters cautiously, finding evidence of someone securing the door from the inside. Amidst the humming of electrical machines, Juliet's call for anyone present echoes faintly through the air. Making her way further, she witnesses rows of servers and realizes she is in the IT department of level 34. Suddenly, a scraping sound catches her attention, guiding her toward a man wrestling with a metal grate covering a hole in the floor. With adrenaline rushing through her veins, Juliet manages to prevent the grate from closing, engaging in a tense encounter with the man who emerges. Despite the initial tension, Juliet introduces herself as Jules and tends to her wounded hand. The man, whose name is Solo, appears more frightened of her than she is of him. He admits to being alone for years and expresses curiosity about the outside world's safety. Juliet assures him that the outside is not safe, recounting her own experiences. Solo acknowledges the shared fragility of their existence and the uncanny notion that none of them should be alive. Chapter 46. In a dimly lit room filled with intricate diagrams and charts, Lucas stood beside Bernard, captivated by the mysterious surroundings. The diagram on the wall resembled the layout of servers, but its purpose remained unknown. Lucas's curiosity piqued when Bernard revealed that the charts represented their legacy, the silos. Bernard guided Lucas to another room and explained that the world was changing, and not for the better. Lucas couldn't help but wonder if this was all connected to the failed cleaning and Juliet's fate. As Lucas questioned Bernard about the purpose of their discoveries, Bernard handed him a massive book, The Pact and the Order. Lucas was instructed to familiarize himself with its contents, as it held their history and listed protocols for emergencies. Lucas recognized the opening lines of the Pact, but Bernard clarified that the rest was the Order, a comprehensive guide created by those who had experienced the worst. Flipping through its pages, Lucas stumbled upon instructions for various scenarios, from earthquakes to sabotage. He couldn't help but question the origins of this knowledge, to which Bernard cryptically replied, "The one people." The weight of their accumulated wisdom hung heavy in the air. Feeling overwhelmed, Lucas doubted his ability to absorb all this information. Bernard reassured him that he only needed to know what was in the book to access it when needed. Lucas's thoughts drifted to the recent events, and he asked Bernard about the morning's turmoil. With a sense of resignation, Bernard directed him to page 72. Lucas's heart raced as he searched for the relevant section, hoping to prove himself to Bernard. Finally, he found the chilling words, "In case of a failed cleaning, prepare for war." Chapter 47. As Juliet follows Solo through a hidden passageway in the server room floor, she is astounded by what she discovers. Solo leads her into his makeshift home, a cluttered room filled with a mattress, a makeshift kitchen, and shelves stocked with metal canisters. Solo explains that he has lived here alone for 34 years, surviving by eating, sleeping, and taking care of his bodily functions. Juliet, curious about the events that led to Solo's isolation, asks him about what happened 34 years ago. Solo reveals that people went crazy, and it only took one bad day for everything to fall apart. He shares that his father, who was the head of IT, showed him this secret room and gave him the keys before sacrificing himself to create a diversion. As Solo recounts his survival, Juliet realizes the perpetual terror that Solo carries with him. He explains that while there were others who fought and lived in the silo for a while, they eventually perished, and Solo has not found a body in years. He shares that he has found evidence of people fighting over food and women, and declares that the rooms they are in are like a silo within a silo, designed to last 10 years. Curious about the meaning of the word silo, Juliet and Solo engage in a conversation about its origins. Solo reveals that a silo was originally an above-ground structure used for storing excess food during times of abundance. He shows Juliet a thick book filled with photographs, one of which depicts silos, reminding Juliet of the building they are currently in. Struggling with the emotions brought upon by isolation, Solo explains how seeds left alone for too long rot and never grow again. Juliet listens as Solo reveals the devastating truth that they, too, are like seeds left too long in the darkness, destined to rot without being able to grow again. As Juliet absorbs Solo's words, she realizes the magnitude of their situation. They are trapped in this underground world, and survival alone is not enough. Determined, she decides that they must find a way to escape this tomb-like existence and discover what lies beyond their limited existence within the silo. Chapter 48. In the tense moments before their rebellion, Nox and his people wait anxiously beyond the stacks of supply. Armed and ready, they hope for a bloodless transfer of power, but they can't ignore the possibility of bad things happening. Nox can sense the fear among his comrades. With his trusty multi-tool in hand, Nox prepares for the upcoming battle. Pyatar, leader of the refinery crew, arrives with his team, swapping their usual black mechanical coveralls for blue supply ones. The stairwell is abuzz with activity and whispers, suspicions of their rebellion spreading like wildfire. Despite the doubts, Nox and Pyatar gather their allies and prepare for the ascent. As they exchange words, it becomes clear that Pyatar believes a smaller, more covert approach would have had a better chance of success. But it's too late for second-guessing now. The plan is in motion. Nox acknowledges that the blackouts have likely begun, and their only option is to make noise and be heard. Nox can't help but wonder if they are becoming the bad people they were warned about, or if they are fighting for what is right. The climb is grueling, but Nox checks on his people, feeling the weight of their lives and his decisions. He reflects on the connection they have to past uprisings, finding himself both fearful and convinced of the necessity of their rebellion. As they march, he questions the history they were taught, wondering if they have become the heroes or villains. Chapter 49. Juliet finds herself surrounded by a pile of books and tins, captivated by the wealth of knowledge contained within. Her companion, Solo, explains that these books are not meant to be read in the traditional sense, but rather serve as a backup of everything they know. Curiosity piqued, Juliet follows Solo into another room cluttered with trash. He shows her a set of maps, each displaying a different silo. Solo excitedly points out their own silo, labeled 17, and reveals that it is just one tiny dot on the vast map, representing a fraction of the entire world. Overwhelmed by the magnitude of their isolated existence, Juliet begins to question everything. Solo shares that he once heard from Silo 1, but the connection was brief and they weren't pleased. Intrigued, Juliet implores Solo to show her how to communicate with Silo 1. Solo leads Juliet to a set of wires that run throughout the silo, explaining their purpose and function. Juliet's frustration grows as she realizes how much Solo knows but considers trivial. She expresses her desire to return to her own silo and share the truth with her people. However, Solo is baffled by her longing to go back, as he believes they are better off in their current situation. Nevertheless, Juliet is determined to let her fellow silo dwellers know the truth and make a difference. Juliet discovers a crucial realization. Someone within her own silo must already know about the other silos and the vast world beyond. Fueled by conviction, she demands that Solo share every detail of how he communicated with Silo 1, as she has someone important she needs to call. With eyes dampened by fear, Solo reluctantly agrees, and Juliet prepares to unravel the mysteries and expose the truth hidden within the depths of the silo. Chapter 50. In the depths of the silo, tension and unease hung in the air like a thick fog. Lucas, armed with a powerful rifle, gazed through the shattered glass window of the conference room. The recent chaos and destruction had left him bewildered. Black guns had been brought out. News of people coming from deep within the silo had startled them all. And now they waited, their eyes fixated on the security gate, anticipating the enemy's arrival. Meanwhile, Nox led a group through the silo's stairwell, focusing on their mission to put an end to the power blackout. As they climbed, they encountered a group of farmers attempting to tap into the power cables. Nox decided to assist them discreetly, allowing 2 members of his team to help while avoiding suspicion. Then, in a sudden and merciless explosion, all the waiting, all the anticipation transformed into terrifying chaos. Steel doors were blown open, gunfire erupted, and bodies fell in a grotesque dance of violence. Lucas witnessed his comrades being torn apart before his eyes, their lives shattered like fragile glass. Amidst the chaos, Lucas, driven by fear and adrenaline, finally fired his rifle. The room became a deadly battleground, bullets tearing through the air as attackers surged forward. Lucas wept as he fought, his tears mingling with the saltiness on his lips. The battle waged on, the clash of metal against flesh ringing through the conference room. With each shot fired, Lucas fought to survive, unaware of the horrors that still awaited him. The room transformed into a theater of bloodshed and desperation, as the struggle for control intensified within the bowels of the silo. Chapter 51. As Bernard wakes up to the chaos and destruction around him, his senses are overwhelmed by the aftermath of an attack. Peter Billings desperately tries to get Bernard's attention, his eyes wide with fear and his coveralls stained with blood. Bernard assesses his injuries, finding a bleeding nose and a throbbing head. Peter informs him that 3 men are dead, some wounded, and a few have entered the stairwell where the agonizing sounds of gunfire echo. Bernard realizes his mistake in underestimating the attackers, lamenting his own stupidity and the fact that he placed Lucas in danger. Bernard instructs Peter to fetch Lucas. Lucas, with his rifle slung over his shoulder, is by Bernard's side in an instant. Lucas reassures Bernard that their side has the upper hand, but Bernard insists that Lucas stays underground for his safety. As they make their way through the smoky hallways, Bernard tells Lucas that the consequences will be far-reaching beyond their immediate location. Lucas reluctantly understands, and they continue on their mission. Lucas leads Bernard to the server room. Bernard leans against a wall, trying to steady himself, while Lucas unlocks the server. But Bernard is too disoriented to notice the flashing code on the panel or the ringing in his ears, which is a result of the fire alarm. Lucas remarks about the noise, pointing to the ceiling, and Bernard finally registers the sound. Bernard rushes toward the back of the server room, pushing Lucas aside. He reaches for his cloth pouch, pulls out the headset, and hastily puts it on. With the jack inserted, he dials a number, but quickly cancels the call. In his panic, Bernard realizes that it wasn't the correct slot, but the light above the slot labeled 17 is blinking. A dead silo is calling him. With a sense of disbelief and trepidation, Bernard inserts the jack into the correct slot and cautiously whispers into the microphone. A voice on the other end responds, asking if he is who they think he is. Bernard demands to know who is calling and how they have access to the servers. The voice accuses Bernard of sending them out to die. Overwhelmed by a mix of emotions, Bernard slumps down while Lucas holds him up. The voice continues, taunting and blaming Bernard for their fate. As the voice threatens to come after him, Bernard is paralyzed by the realization of who it is. In his disbelief, he shouts back at the ghost, but the voice commands him to listen carefully. Bernard braces himself for what comes next, the promise of the voice's return to come home and seek revenge. Chapter 52, Silo 18. In the aftermath of a devastating explosion, Mark, a mechanic from Silo 18, finds himself fleeing down a great stairway, surrounded by chaos and carnage. The ringing in his ears drowns out the screams of the wounded and the shouts of his pursuers. He clings to a rifle, wounded and desperate, as he navigates the blood-slicked steps. Mark's mind is consumed with the explosion that robbed him of his hearing and his friends. His boss, Knox, and other comrades have been lost, leaving him alone and terrified. With every step, all he can think about is finding his wife and reaching the safety of the down deep. Gunshots echo from above, bullets zing through the air, and Mark takes cover, trying to stay out of sight. He encounters 3 members of Supply, one of them wounded and being helped along. Unable to hear his own voice, Mark urges them to keep moving, his own blood mingling with the blood he slips in. The relentless pursuit continues, and Mark fires back sporadically to slow down their assailants. As he descends to level 42, Mark desperately searches for his wife, Shirley. He shouts her name, hoping for a glimpse of her through the cracked doorway. Fingers curl around the edge of the steel jamb, but Mark's deafening shouts go unheard. Someone points downward, indicating Shirley's possible whereabouts. Realizing that going down is his only option, Mark continues his descent. He encounters a gravely wounded man, clutching a chair leg protruding from his stomach. In a solemn moment, the woman from Supply hands a bomb to the injured man, who accepts it with trembling hands. Mark is pulled away by the others. He watches helplessly as the wounded man, bomb in hand, comes face to face with the oncoming enemy. The assailants close in, and Mark and his companions flee further down the stairs. The deafening sounds of gunfire fill the air. A young boy appears at the swinging door, but the hands of adults pull him back moments before a gigantic blast shakes the stairwell. Mark is dazed and disoriented, but survives the explosion that propels them into the spiraling darkness of the silo. Chapter 53, Silo 18. Unable to find Shirley initially, Mark is relieved when she suddenly emerges from the crowd. Mark's hearing has slightly improved, allowing him to overhear conversations about the damage caused by the previous explosion. They embrace, but Shirley's concern quickly shifts to his wounded arm. Mark reassures her, but she insists on inspecting the wound. Amidst the commotion, it becomes clear that there are disagreements about whether mechanicals injured should receive treatment further below, causing further tension between the members of Mechanical and Supply. As they prepare to move on, Mark and Shirley encounter a jam of people at the security station leading into Mechanical. Steel plates have been welded across the entrance, and the terrified crowd fights to get through the tiny gap beneath the turnstile. The situation intensifies as shots ring out, and people scramble for safety. Mark and Shirley retreat to the stairs as chaos erupts. Mark decides to take action and runs back up the stairs, aiming to defend their position against the shooters above. He manages to take down 2 of them, but is soon outmatched. Injured and unable to retrieve his rifle, Mark stumbles back down the stairs, his legs giving way. Despite his injuries, he manages to reach the bottom floor, where Shirley is already half inside the makeshift entrance. As they lie on the floor, feeling oddly at peace, Mark urges her to go through the opening and screams his love for her. Shirley is pulled into the darkness by someone on the other side, leaving Mark behind. The person in yellow who assisted Shirley turns and meets a violent end. The chapter concludes with Mark's vision fading, as his life comes to a sudden and tragic conclusion. Chapter 54, Silo 18, 3 weeks later. Walker, confined to his cot, listens to the sounds of violence echoing through the silo. The gunshots and shouts emanate from the entrance to Mechanical, leaving him on edge with his blankets drawn over his head. He desperately pleads for the chaos to end. Jenkins, the young successor to Mechanical after Knox's death, storms into Walker's workshop, demanding that the radio be fixed. Jenkins explains the importance of getting the radio operational, emphasizing that if they can't listen in, defending their silo becomes increasingly difficult. Walker shows Jenkins the modifications he made to the radio, suggesting that the silence may be intentional, and that someone is purposely excluding their radio. Jenkins, seized by worry and frustration, has little patience for Walker's tinkering. He demands to be informed when the radio is fixed, making it clear that this task takes precedence over everything else. Left alone in his workshop, Walker contemplates the cascade of events that his actions have set in motion. He debates the worthiness of it all, feeling the weight of regret and the burden of responsibility for the violence and suffering around him. In a moment of vulnerability, Walker briefly considers cutting his own wrists and joining his lost loved ones in death. As temptation beckons him, Walker's resolve strengthens. He cannot escape the burning desire to tinker, the restless hands that have worked diligently all his life. With a renewed determination, he resumes his efforts to fix the radio. Chapter 55, Silo 17. Juliet, perched on a landing in Silo 17, works to repair a loose wire. As she handles the wire, it pricks her finger, and she curses, almost dropping the other end. After securing the wires to the railing, she wants to check if the plumbing is working properly and calls down to Solo, who is positioned further down the stairwell. Solo responds with cautious optimism, sensing a slight vibration in the pipe. Curiosity gets the better of Juliet, and she decides to investigate the situation herself. Arriving at the landing of 136, the last dry landing before the flood, Juliet leans on the railing, catching her breath. Solo, standing on the only dry step they had managed to expose through their weeks of effort, looks up at her hopefully. However, upon contemplating the magnitude of the task ahead, Juliet becomes nauseous. The prospect of waiting 2 years to fully clear the silo of floodwaters seems unbearable. The corrosion that would occur once the submerged machines are exposed to oxygen further dampens her spirits. Solo, unaware of her internal struggles, exclaims, "2 years is nothing." Juliet finds solace in Solo's unwavering enthusiasm, but knows they cannot afford to wait so long. The intense isolation and mounting challenges of their environment have already begun to take a toll on their mental states. Determined to explore alternatives, Juliet decides to salvage the backup generator instead. She knows they'll need to scrounge for tools and supplies, but the newfound sense of purpose gives her hope. As Solo cheerfully envisions upcoming projects, Juliet realizes she needs some time alone in the server room and plans to make a call. Though Solo protests, criticizing her for spending too much time on the communication device, Juliet ignores his complaints. She embarks on the arduous climb back up Silo 17, acknowledging the truth in Solo's words. The calls are her lifeline, a way to feel connected to a world larger than their desolate silo. Chapter 56, Silo 18. In the midst of Lucas reading about the devastating effects of the Civil War, the lights in the server room suddenly change from steady white to a pulsating red. Lucas carefully places a silver thread in the book he was reading and closes it, concealing it amongst the set of other books. He glances at the computer screen, where live views of the servers reveal a figure in gray coveralls making their way towards him. Lucas recognizes the figure as Bernard, a short man with a mustache and glasses who often brings him lunch. Excitedly, Lucas hurries to open the hatchway for Bernard, hoping for a meal. Bernard arrives with a tray filled with succulent pork ribs, explaining that there was a disturbance in the bazaar and he didn't want the meat to go to waste. Lucas is grateful for the unexpected feast. As they enjoy their meal, Lucas and Bernard discuss the current situation in the silo. Bernard reveals that Sims, the head of it, believes the threat from the resistance is not yet over, so Lucas might have to continue staying in the server room for a few more days. However, their conversation is abruptly interrupted by a buzzing noise coming from one of the servers. Bernard reacts angrily, frustrated by the constant ringing. He decides to modify the server, instructing Lucas to add a simple LED array to indicate the importance of incoming calls. Lucas agrees and begins eating again, trying to appear calm despite the interruption. Bernard eventually leaves, mentioning that he spoke with Lucas's mother and is considering allowing her into the server room to see him. Lucas is hopeful but questions the need for such precautions, believing in the loyalty of the techs. Bernard reminds Lucas to never answer the server until he has cleared it with the other it heads. Once alone, Lucas secretly removes a pair of headphones from his pouch and connects them to the server labeled 17. He waits anxiously until Juliet's voice finally comes through. "How's everything going over there?" Chapter 57, Silo 18. In the depths of Silo 18, Walker is hard at work trying to fix the radio. He passionately explains his theory to Scotty, his bright understudy, about the ripples in the air that the radio captures. Despite their efforts, they struggle to catch any clear transmissions. Walker suspects that the mysterious circuit board labeled 18 might be the problem. While Scotty suggests bypassing the defective board, Walker hesitates, afraid of causing more damage. Their conversation is interrupted by Shirley, who bursts into the workshop with a covered tray of food. She scolds Walker for not eating and accuses him of giving his rations away to others. Shirley demands that Walker eats while she watches, concerned about his declining health. Reluctantly, Walker takes a few bites, feeling a knot in his stomach that refuses to ease. As Shirley questions the source of a strange noise in the workshop, Walker adjusts the volume on the radio, attempting to drown out the sound. Gradually, Shirley becomes involved in Walker's tinkering. While they work together, Shirley updates Walker on the deteriorating situation outside. She shares rumors about the power in it being maxed out. Walker suggests that tampering with the silo's power would only cause more harm. As Shirley adjusts the newly installed potentiometer on the radio, the static begins to modulate. The voices become clearer, confirming that their modifications are successful. Overwhelmed with joy, Shirley believes they have fixed the radio. However, Walker senses something is amiss as he hears unfamiliar voices talking about Deputy Roberts. Puzzled, he questions Shirley about who Deputy Roberts is, realizing that they have inadvertently tapped into conversations from another silo. The revelation leaves them both stunned. Chapter 58, Silo 17. Juliet toils away in the suit lab, mindful of conserving the unknown source of power in Silo 17. She contemplates Walker's obsession with his work and wonders if her own immersion in the lab is leading her down the same path. Despite the eerie presence of hanging cleaning suits, Juliet feels a strange comfort in the suit lab. She begins working on an air compressor, but is interrupted by Solo's arrival with freshly baked bread. Solo's culinary experiments with flatbread have become a regular occurrence. Determined to broaden his culinary skills, Juliet plans to teach him more recipes. Returning to her work, Juliet reveals to Solo her plan to create a way to breathe underwater. She intends to utilize the airtight cleaning suits, connecting them to a constant supply of air from it. Amused and slightly bewildered, Solo questions if the submerged pumps will still work. Juliet reassures him that they should, having been designed for submersion. She instructs Solo on operating the air compressor and assigns him the task of monitoring it while she works below. She also plans to install a portable deputy radio in her suit helmet for communication. Chapter 59, Silo 18. In the depths of Silo 18, Lucas finds himself in a state of despair and monotony. No longer occupied with his usual routine, he spends his days reading books and pondering the vastness of the world outside. The weeks feel like months, and he can't keep track of time or personal hygiene. Lucas yearns for change, for something more than the solitary confinement he has been subjected to. One day, as Lucas leans against the library shelves, he smells a foul odor and realizes it's coming from him. His routine has become so disrupted that he hardly remembers the last time he showered. It's as if he's teetering on the edge of an abyss, with a terrifying truth just beyond his grasp. Suddenly, Lucas is brought back to reality by the throbbing red lights, indicating someone is at the server door. It's Peter Billings, the sheriff of Silo 18. Lucas is always on guard around Peter, sensing an underlying tension and competitiveness between them. Peter inquires about Lucas' activities in the server room, suspecting there's more to his actions than meets the eye. Feeling trapped, Lucas reluctantly agrees to have dinner with Peter in the server room. They engage in small talk, but Lucas is always wary, knowing Peter's position of authority. Peter mentions an upcoming assault on the Mechanical's wall, revealing that they plan to destroy it and put an end to the rebellion. Lucas can't help but feel conflicted, knowing the suffering he experienced during his time in Mechanical. After the dinner ends, Juliet calls him through the headphones. Lucas is relieved to hear her voice, even though it puts him at risk of being discovered. Juliet pokes fun at Peter and expresses her desire to speak to him again. Lucas, however, grows increasingly paranoid about being caught and tries to steer the conversation away from dangerous topics. Their conversation takes a dark turn when Juliet mentions killing Peter. Lucas vehemently denies having any interest in violence, feeling overwhelmed with the weight of the secrets he carries. But Juliet presses on, reminding Lucas of the importance of choosing the right path and taking action in the face of adversity. Feeling frustrated, Lucas ends the call, unable to handle the mounting pressure and conflicting loyalties. He contemplates his actions and the person he has become, haunted by the memories of the woman he killed in Mechanical. Lucas is filled with remorse, realizing that he is not like the others and that his true allegiance lies elsewhere. With a heavy heart, Lucas curls up against the server, wrestling with his emotions and the realization of who he truly is. The image of the woman he killed haunts his thoughts as he questions the choices he has made and wonders if redemption is possible. Chapter 60, Silo 18. In the depths of Silo 18, concealed from the world above, words crackle through the airwaves, exposing the existence of other silos, unknown and hidden like their own. As Walker obsesses over the mechanics of the device, Shirley's mind teeters on the edge of panic. Questions cascade through their thoughts like a deluge, the truth just beyond reach. The revelation of silos beyond their own walls sends shockwaves through their souls, but Walker's fascination surpasses the fear that grips them. Lost in the mysteries, he avidly tunes the dial, searching for stronger signals and connections. The implications are staggering. Could there be more silos, countless others shrouded in secrecy? A sudden explosion violently shatters their fascination, shaking the very foundations of their sanctuary. Walker falls, disoriented, amid the rain of dust and debris, his precious magnifiers splintered. In the haze of confusion and pain, he pleads for help from Scotty, his faithful companion. Moments later, strong hands haul him to his feet. Reality crashes down upon them. An invading force breaches their walls, gunfire echoes through the corridors, and chaos reigns supreme. With urgency coursing through their veins, they scramble to gather their belongings before fleeing. Walker's repair of the radio feels both triumphant and futile in the face of imminent danger. Harper and Jenkins rally the others, shouting orders, while Shirley remains determined to salvage the precious radio components. The world around them spirals into madness, but amidst the chaos, Walker whispers a single word of guidance, the antenna. Shirley leaps onto the workbench, snatches the wires and metal rods, securing their only hope for communication. Walker's mind races as he contemplates what to save from this crumbling sanctuary. With their belongings hastily assembled, Walker and Shirley are thrust into a world they never anticipated facing. Chapter 61, Silo 17. In the murky depths of Silo 17, Juliet prepares for a perilous descent, weighed down by equal parts fear and determination. The act of donning the cleaning suit sends waves of panic through her, contrasting her expectations of a mere water submersion. The suffocating dread builds within her as Solo zips up the suit, sealing her fate. They exchange tools, and the weight of her knife brings a comforting reassurance. Before donning the helmet, Juliet requests to secure the rope first. Solo obediently follows her instructions, lowering the rope into the water, mindful of potential entanglements. As her mind spirals with trepidation, she fights to push aside memories of her walks outside and the uncertain dangers that lurked there. The anticipation of inching toward madness drives her forward. Intent on diverting her thoughts, Juliet examines her tools. She checks the array of drivers, tying each one with string for easy access. She takes stock of the spanner, cutters, and other essentials, compartmentalizing her focus. The coils of tubing and electrical wire lie neatly arranged, ensuring they won't tangle during her descent. Piece by piece, the helmet is fastened, the air hose connected, and the radio activated. The hiss of air fills her ears as she hides her vulnerability beneath the helmet. A surge of confidence washes over her as Solo playfully adjusts the volume on his radio, enabling communication with her submerged form. With a thumbs-up sign, Juliet affirms her readiness to proceed. With Solo's smile radiating through her helmet, she feels a surge of confidence. She stands at the water's edge, boots breaking the surface without the anticipated cold shock. The suit proves its insulation, granting her a semblance of comfort. Dimly aware of the humid mist forming inside her helmet, she activates the radio and instructs Solo to test the power switch. Breathless, she confirms her safety to Solo, her movements constrained by the restrictive suit. Held prisoner by the weights on her shins, she clings to the rope, her descent into the watery abyss commencing. Chapter 62, Silo 18. Lucas finds himself seated at a delicate wooden desk, surrounded by shelves filled with tantalizing books. The chair beneath him is a symbol of luxury, but he treads carefully, fearing its fragile state. Lucas pretends to read the Order, a book filled with rigid instructions, while his eyes long for the more intriguing volumes encased within tin boxes. As Lucas peruses the Order, he wonders if Bernard, the head of IT, is observing him. From his perch in the small study, Lucas steals glances at Bernard, who jumps between tinkering with the computer and relaying instructions to the security forces. Lucas, growing restless, decides to divert his attention to academic references at the back of the Order, discovering chapters on group persuasion, mind control, and the impacts of fear. However, these revelations only fuel his disquiet. Unable to contain his curiosity any longer, Lucas interrupts the silence, seeking answers about the history of the silo and its creators. Bernard, however, dismisses Lucas' yearning for knowledge and emphasizes the importance of understanding the Order before delving into the other books. Yet, Lucas persists, questioning the absence of information about the silo's origins and the people responsible for its existence. Bernard finally turns to face Lucas, emphasizing the practicality of studying the Order to maintain the silo's cohesion. Lucas, undeterred, argues that the other books are useless if no one lives to read them. Engaged in a silent battle of wills, Lucas insists that knowing how the world ended and the events leading to their confinement matters to him. Bernard, initially hesitant, concedes to Lucas' persistence and reveals that the information Lucas seeks is stored elsewhere. Bernard challenges Lucas, questioning the significance of the past and its connection to their legacy. Lucas reflects on Juliet's guidance. The past holds their mistakes and unavoidable tragedies, while their legacy is created through hope, accomplishments, and the potential for a better future. Lucas understands that they cannot change the past, but they can shape what lies ahead. Impressed, Bernard commends Lucas for his insight and confirms that Lucas is nearly ready to learn the truth. Lucas realizes that the Order is the roadmap to navigate the obstacles between the past and the future's hope, to fix and prevent the mistakes of the past. Bernard, wearing a smile of approval, assures Lucas that his time to uncover the truth is approaching soon. As Bernard returns to his computer and reaches for his mouse, Lucas is left with a burning curiosity, eager to uncover the secrets hidden within the silo's history and contribute to shaping a brighter future. Chapter 63, Silo 17. Deep within the silo, Juliet embarks on a mesmerizing descent towards mechanical, accompanied only by the tranquil sounds of her own breath. With her radio barking at her to descend slower, Juliet halts her descent and ponders the delay caused by Solo. Bubbles escape her overflow valve, and she waits anxiously for him to give her the go-ahead. Finally, she receives the signal to proceed and resumes her descent. As she passes a flooded level, she catches a glimpse of shadows and pale, bloated faces, a haunting reminder of the violence that now lies preserved within the deep waters of the silo. Arriving in mechanical, Juliet bravely overcomes the obstacle of the security gate. She reaches the sump room, ready to hook up the power lines to the pump. However, a terrifying realization sets in. Her air supply has stopped, leaving her confined in a suit with no fresh air. Panicked and struggling to think clearly, Juliet manages to connect the power wires, hoping that her makeshift setup will be enough. But as the radio communication with Solo abruptly cuts off and the bubbles from her overflow valve cease, she realizes that the pressure in her suit is gone. A new kind of pressure starts to mount within her as she faces the dire consequences of being trapped in the depths of the water with no air. Chapter 64, Silo 18. As the chaos of an attack erupts above, Walker and Shirley scramble down the square stairs of Silo 18. Clutching the pieces of a home-built radio, they dodge mechanics and sparks raining down upon them. With the rattle of gunfire growing louder, they make their way to the generator room, where Jenkins manages the influx of people seeking refuge. Inside the generator room, Shirley clears out the control room and investigates the fuel levels. The power supply is intact, providing some reassurance amidst the turmoil. Walker begins piecing together the radio, his white beard glistening with sweat. However, they realize that they forgot to grab speakers. Shirley returns to the control room to aid Walker. With a sense of curiosity overpowering her fear, she laughs with Walker as he improvises the headphones, snipping away unnecessary parts and striping wires. Intrigued by the possibilities that lie within the radio, they ignore the impending danger closing in on them. Finally, the earphones are ready, and they cautiously tune into the voices they had discovered before. As Shirley contemplates Walker's future once they are inevitably rounded up, a voice crackles through the earphones, stopping them both in their tracks. It's Juliet. Walker's hands tremble with tearful joy, and Shirley's disbelief gives way to overwhelmed emotions. The ramifications of this unexpected connection weigh heavily on them both. Chapter 65, Silo 17. Juliet finds herself in a desperate situation at the bottom of mechanical in Silo 17. With the air hose losing pressure, she realizes the compressor must have malfunctioned. Panic sets in as she contemplates the impossibility of reaching breathable air. Struggling to breathe, Juliet decides to abandon her hasty wiring job on the sump pump and take off the weights on her suit. Despite her efforts, she fails to release them. In a moment of clarity, Juliet remembers her knife and manages to unfasten the straps holding the weights. With great effort, Juliet frees herself from the second weight, but the sudden release causes her to lose control. Her boots fly up, and she smashes into the pipes above her. In the ensuing darkness, her flashlight slips from her grasp, leaving her disoriented and desperate. Struggling against panic, Juliet attempts to free herself from the entanglement of pipes. Lost and unable to see, she realizes she is running out of air within her suit. In a race against time, she feels for the hose connected to her collar and begins gathering it, hoping it hasn't been severed. Desperately pulling hand over hand, Juliet is plagued by fear and uncertainty. With each breath, her air grows depleted, intensifying her panic. She dreads the possibility of the hose being cut and fears her next reach might result in grasping nothing but water. She clings to the hose, desperately navigating through the darkness, her helmet bumping against pipes as she pulls herself forward. Juliet continues to haul herself toward what she hopes is a way out, knowing that her last breath could be imminent, intermingling with the drowned and the dead. Chapter 66, Silo 18. As Lucas sits with his mother outside the server room, he assures her that there will be a promotion awaiting him on this mission, a significant one at that. They discuss the upcoming election, which his mother is excited about, and she expresses her relief that he will be taken care of and provided with sufficient food amid rationing. Lucas promises to look after himself and assures his mother that he will be well fed. Bernard, the acting mayor, and Sheriff Billings join them, and Lucas's mother thanks Bernard for taking care of her son. Lucas prepares himself mentally, trying to appear confident as he tightens his grip on his damp palms. Bernard squeezes his shoulder in support before they enter the server room. Inside the server room, Lucas and Bernard begin their task. Lucas is handed a pair of headphones with a microphone, and they both align themselves for the official operation. Lucas fumbles with the headphones at first, but Bernard patiently guides him. With the headphones in place, Lucas feels a mixture of nerves and excitement. Bernard plugs a cable into the designated port, initiating the connection with the outside world. Suddenly, Lucas hears a deep and hollow voice on the other end, demanding his name. Lucas responds, trying to control his stammering. The voice seems to assess him, asking about his role and his dedication to maintaining order. Lucas answers dutifully, though he longs to express his doubts and questions. The voice inquires about Lucas's involvement in the suit labs and the progress in the lower levels. Lucas, suppressing his suspicions, assures the voice that progress is being made. Then, a significant question arises. The voice asks Lucas if he would have done anything differently from the beginning. Trying to quell his emotions, Lucas responds that he would not have done anything differently, emphasizing his commitment to the order. But deep down, he questions the necessity and morality of the sacrifices demanded. The voice then informs Lucas that he is next in line to control and operate Silo 18. Before ending the conversation, the voice mentions the difficulty of marking a silo for destruction, describing it as a parent losing thousands of children. Lucas acknowledges his willingness to be tough, recalling his father's teachings. The voice grants him an opportunity to ask a question. Lucas takes this chance to ask about the origin of the silos, believing it provides them with purpose. The voice challenges Lucas to share his own theories, leading him to realize that they are both the ones who built the silos, and also the ones who've destroyed the world. This shocking revelation stuns Lucas, and the conversation concludes. As Lucas removes the headphones, he is left in a state of disbelief. He feels the weight of the truth and the enormity of the task ahead. The voice warns Lucas to focus on what's beneath his feet, emphasizing the importance of their underground existence. Chapter 67, Silo 18. In the control room, Walker and Shirley hear Juliet's voice coming through the dismantled headset. They are in disbelief, wondering how her voice could be trapped in the air, or if they are picking up conversations from the past. Walker, with tears shining in his beard, insists that this is happening now. He grabs Shirley's arm, excitedly affirming that Juliet is alive and with others outside the silo. Realizing they need a transmitter to communicate with Juliet, Walker searches for the missing component. Panic sets in as he realizes it's on his other workbench. Determined, Shirley volunteers to retrieve a transmitter from the mining storehouse while Walker stays behind. Outside, Shirley encounters confused and frightened faces, but she doesn't have time to explain. She reaches the mine storeroom, looking for a transmitter. However, she is confronted by Jenkins and Harper, who reveal their plan to blow up the stairwell where the miners are working. Desperate to help Walker, Shirley begs for a few minutes to find the transmitter. After wrestling with Jenkins, she races towards the stairwell, ignoring the chaos around her. Shirley reaches the storeroom and frantically searches for the transmitter, finding 3 of them along with some relays and dynamite. She takes them with her and rushes back to the stairs, fearing she's run out of time. As she reaches the top, she sees the miners have evacuated and Jenkins calls for the explosion. The ground trembles beneath Shirley as she falls to the floor, but she quickly recovers and heads towards the generator room. Amidst the chaos of the ongoing battle, her mind is focused on the task at hand, reaching Walker with the transmitters and reuniting him with Juliet. Chapter 68, Silo 17. In the darkness, Juliet struggles to find her way through the freezing, murky waters. Her senses return gradually as she navigates blindly, desperately clinging onto the air hose. As she struggles, her suit's air supply runs out, and she realizes she must reach the surface quickly. With a mad drive, she pushes herself through the corridor, the weight of water pressing down on her. A glimmer of hope appears as the water changes from pitch black to a green tint. Guided by memory, Juliet makes her way towards the security station and the stairwell, straining against the stiff and bulky suit. The dizziness sets in, and her desperation intensifies. She longs for a breath of fresh air. As she reaches the security gate, Juliet feels her chest tighten. The temptation to remove her helmet and inhale the water is overwhelming. She fights against it, urging herself to keep moving. But the lack of air becomes suffocating, and she finally sheds her helmet, the water flooding over her face, dragging her down. In the freezing depths, Juliet regains her senses. She spots the knife in her hand and remembers the last time she was trapped in a walk-in fridge, contemplating suicide. Her mind clears, and she realizes she can use the knife to cut herself free from the suit. With each gasp of water, Juliet fights her way to the surface, gripping onto the hose, and finally breaks through to find trapped air bubbles below the stairwell. She greedily inhales the trapped air, tasting the metallic tang of salvation. Fueled by hope, she climbs the stairs, savoring each step as it provides her with a small pocket of air. She plays a game in her mind, imagining herself hopping from one pocket to another, counting steps, driven by the desire to survive. But as she nears the surface, the taste of water turns toxic, and she struggles to find any usable air pockets. Her last breath escapes, and she coughs, her head breaking through the stifling gas and oil. Juliet fights back, seeking air where there is none, until finally she resurfaces, finding Solo, her companion, injured and barely conscious. Struggling with her own diminishing strength, Juliet pleads with Solo to hold on, unaware of the severity of his injuries. As her mind clears, she sees the blood on Solo's face and realizes the extent of his wounds. She desperately tries to tend to him, urging him to stay conscious. But Solo's strength fades, and in his final moments, he reveals that his name is Jimmy, and that he was never truly alone. With those words, he slips away, leaving Juliet devastated and clinging to the landing, her tears mixing with the freezing water. Chapter 69, Silo 18. Lucas carefully pours boiling water over his tea leaves, his hands trembling with shock. He turns to Bernard, desperately seeking answers. How could anyone intentionally bring about the destruction of the entire world? Lucas wonders how Bernard, and others like him, bear the weight of this knowledge. Bernard explains that certain facts must be suppressed, lest curiosity ignite the flames of destruction within the silo. Lucas questions the methods used to annihilate millions of lives. Bernard reveals that Operation 50, the extermination, may still be ongoing. The population within the silos must remain homogeneous, and any surviving pockets of humanity pose a threat to the plan. Lucas recalls his conversation with a man who assured him that only 50 silos exist. Bernard corrects him, revealing that there are, in fact, 47 silos. Lucas is stunned to learn that hundreds of years have passed since the decision to destroy the world was made. Horrified, Lucas struggles to comprehend the motives behind the destruction. Bernard believes it was a desperate measure taken by people in power who feared their impending demise. They planned to preserve their way of life by creating a world where resources were tightly guarded and conflicts were avoided. Lucas grapples with the realization that they are now complicit in this vision for the world. He contemplates the legacy of evil that has shaped their existence, questioning who truly bears responsibility. As he gazes at the crossed-out silos on the schematic, Lucas wrestles with the realization that he may be unknowingly becoming one of them. The question lingers: how did Bernard not see this within himself? Chapter 70, Silo 18. Amidst the chaos and gunfire, Shirley rushes into the control room, handing Courtney and Walker transmitters with a sense of urgency. Courtney and Walker are surprised to see Shirley, especially with a bloody face. Courtney demands answers, unable to comprehend how Shirley survived. Walker focuses on their mission, saying that if their plan works, they can communicate with Jules herself. Concerned about the workers tampering with the exhaust system, Shirley questions their intentions. Courtney explains that they aim to reroute the exhaust as a way to fight back. They plan to choke out the enemy with their own fumes. Shirley expresses her unease about such drastic measures. However, in the midst of their conversation, Walker's voice breaks through on the microphone, attempting to make contact with Juliet. The women eagerly listen for a response, clinging to the hope of hearing Juliet. The speakers crackle with a voice giving them a glimmer of hope, but their excitement quickly deflates as they realize it's not Juliet's voice. Disheartened, they feel the weight of disappointment and uncertainty. Determined to gather more information, Walker poses a question to the unknown speaker, asking about their whereabouts. The response comes with a chilling warning, claiming they are nowhere and cannot be found. They cruelly announce that their friend is dead, a victim of their own doing. Shirley, Courtney, and Walker are left stunned, grappling with the implications of this message. The uncertainty of their situation deepens, fueling their determination to find answers and fight against the powerful forces working against them. Chapter 71, Silo 17. In the desolate depths of the silo, Juliet struggles to free herself from a freezing, water-filled suit. Beside her lies Solo, motionless and without a pulse, his body a testament to the perils they face. Determined to survive, Juliet fights against the numbing cold and manages to shed her tattered suit, revealing 2 layers of wet undersuit beneath. She shivers uncontrollably, desperate for warmth. With frozen hands and a trembling body, Juliet stumbles toward the compressor in search of heat. But her hands are useless, incapable of unscrewing the gas's cap. The cruel cold seeps into her, urging her to give in to sleep, but she resists, knowing it might be her final slumber. Defying the numbness that envelops her, Juliet wields her knife. With each strike against the heat exchanger, she hopes for a spark, for the flame that will bring her the precious heat she craves. And there it is, a sudden burst of heat and a wash of warmth against her face. The compressor catches fire, crackling and burning, providing Juliet with a meager but vital source of heat. As she crouches by the fire, she feels her body slowly coming back to life, tingling with the returning sensation. Naked and vulnerable, she feeds the fire, knowing its feeble glow is her lifeline. But fear overtakes her. The walls of the landing seem to close in as she envisions others approaching, trapping her in this cold and treacherous place. Clutching her knife tightly, she contemplates her ghost-like appearance, her pale face and trembling lips. Seeking solace by the dying fire, she waits, her eyes fixated on Solo, promising never to abandon his lifeless body. But as the last sparks flicker and die, Juliet decides to move, peeling off her soaked undersuit and donning another, damp but better than nothing. With feet rendered unsteady by the cold, she returns to Solo, and this time she feels a weak pulse, a glimpse of hope. She wakes Solo, calling his name, and his eyes blink open, disoriented yet alive. She tends to his head wound, supplying water from her makeshift bandage. With pain and confusion written on his face, Solo asks about their attackers, but Juliet has no answers. Together, they must find a way out, to escape the frigid depths and reach safety above. They know the ascent won't be easy, but they also know they are not crazy, that the threats they've encountered are real. With the determination to survive, Juliet reassures Solo, assuring him that they will make it out of the darkness. They rise, ready to face whatever lies ahead and emerge into a world they hope will be filled with warmth and light. Chapter 72, Silo 18. Lucas finds himself unable to focus on his studies, instead captivated by the sounds of distant war over the radio. The final push approaches, and casualties continue to mount among Sims's team. Lucas can't help but listen, waiting for Juliet's call, anxious to know the outcome of their fight. Feeling a mix of frustration and curiosity, Lucas begins to piece together the existence of someone called George in Juliet's life. His mind races with questions and doubts, wondering if George was a past love, a crush, or a forbidden love. Lucas yearns to go back in time, to the days before the cleaning and burials, when Juliet would sit with him in quiet companionship. Unable to resist the temptation, Lucas logs into the servers and searches for the name George. He discovers several hits, but focuses on one man, 32 years old, who worked in the bazaar and had a family. Lucas's jealousy flares, but his curiosity drives him further. With a sense of inevitability, he stumbles upon the truth: George is dead, having died in an industrial accident 3 years prior. A mixture of conflicting emotions washes over Lucas as he examines George's photo, trying to find reasons to dislike him. But the truth is, George seems like a good man, making it harder for Lucas to hold on to his jealousy. He delves deeper, determined to understand the connection between George and Juliet. Lucas discovers that Juliet had been involved in the investigation of George's death. Questions flood his mind, wondering if she had been in love with him, or if she had fallen for the memory of the man after his passing. Lucas grabs a charcoal and records George's ID and case number, intent on learning more about him and unraveling the mystery that surrounds Juliet. Chapter 73, Silo 17. Juliet and Solo make their way up the spiral staircase, their bodies shivering from the cold. Solo, injured and disoriented after the attack, struggles to keep up. Juliet leans on her knife for security, a constant reminder of the dangers they've faced. They discuss whether Solo can make it to the deputy station, a dozen levels above them. Solo, not familiar with the deep levels of the silo, agrees to try. As they ascend, Juliet's mind races with questions. How many attackers are there? Where did they all come from? And most importantly, why are they being targeted? Finally, they reach 132, and Solo collapses from exhaustion. Juliet realizes she can't leave him behind and insists that they continue together. They have one more level to go before reaching the lower farms, where they hope to find sustenance and shelter. Upon reaching the lower farms, Juliet sets out to find clothing and shelter for herself and Solo. She ventures into the offices and dining hall, hoping to find something to keep them comfortable. However, her search is interrupted by a sound coming from beyond the plants in the grow station. Juliet cautiously moves towards the sound and discovers a group of kids huddled together. One of the older boys attacks her, but she defends herself with her knife. She quickly realizes that these kids are survivors, born in the silo and left behind by their parents. They are scared, guarded, and reluctant to trust her. Juliet remains determined to help them, especially when she discovers a young girl holding a baby. She asks for their names and learns that the older boy is called Rickson, the young mother is nameless, and the girl beside her is Elise. The kids are skeptical of Juliet's intentions, but she reassures them that she wants to provide them with a better life. As Juliet comforts the young girl, Elise, she realizes their dire situation and the pain they've endured at such a young age. Her compassion motivates her to rescue the kids from their current living conditions. She instructs Rickson and the others to gather their belongings, promising them a safe place with food and electricity. However, the older girl resists, insisting that they've been fine without Juliet's help. Undeterred, Juliet keeps her focus on the well-being of the children and offers to assist the young mother with her baby. As the children reluctantly begin to gather their things, Juliet senses a shift in their demeanor, an ember of hope igniting within them. Just as they start preparing to leave, Juliet hears her radio, Walker desperately calling for her. The unexpected contact fills her with a mixture of relief and concern, adding a new layer of urgency to their escape. Chapter 74, Silo 18. In Silo 18, a sense of urgency grips Courtney, Shirley, and Walker as they frantically try to establish communication with Juliet, who is in another silo. Shirley holds the microphone, hoping to reach her friend, and finally, Juliet's voice crackles through the speakers. It becomes apparent that Juliet is aware of the fighting happening within Silo 18, further bewildering Shirley and Walker. Shirley shares her concerns about diverting the exhaust feed, worried it may disrupt the system. However, Juliet warns her to stop the others from proceeding with the plan, stating that the cooling is vital for the servers. Shirley is taken aback by Juliet's knowledge of the silo's layout, and the sounds of gunfire draw nearer, and anxiety fills the room. As the chaos unfolds, Shirley hands the headset to Walker and joins Courtney by the window, watching the violence unfold outside. The deputies and other people are falling one by one. Walker frantically tries to communicate with Juliet, grappling with his emotions as he clings to his beloved electronics. Chapter 75, Silo 18. Lucas finds himself in the server room of Silo 18, perched on an upturned trash can, trying to catch a whiff of something peculiar in the air. Bernard, the head of it, interrupts as he enters the room. Lucas loses his balance, but manages to maintain his grip on the server, and Bernard playfully remarks on Lucas' unsuccessful attempt at fitting on the small trash can. However, Lucas diverts the conversation, focusing on the letters Bernard has brought from his mother. Lucas, curious about a certain case, subtly tries to gain access to the closed investigations folder in Bernard's office. The case involves George Wilkins, who Lucas reveals to have died a few years ago in mechanical. Intrigued by Lucas' line of questioning, Bernard grows cautious and cryptic, revealing that George was considered a dangerous man with ideas that could incite insurrection. Lucas senses a deeper meaning behind Bernard's words and presses further, realizing that George's death was not natural, but a result of Bernard's actions. Bernard justifies his actions, stating that there are diseases in society that require removal for the greater good. Lucas is stunned by this revelation, conflicted about his role in the silo, but unable to voice his concerns. As Lucas contemplates his situation, Bernard senses his hesitation and tells Lucas that he must weed out threats to the silo. Seeing Lucas resistant, Bernard realizes that he was wrong about Lucas. He would never be able to do what it takes to be head of IT. Lucas is instantly afraid of Bernard and desperately asks to get some fresh air and take a break from the confined space. Bernard, with malicious intent, forces Lucas to say, "I want out of here." He then radios Sheriff Billings and says, "Lucas Kyle, engineer first class, says he wants out." Chapter 76, Silo 17. Juliet, leading a group of orphans through the silo, anxiously checks her radio for any word from Walker and Shirley. There's been no communication since they were cut off amidst gunfire. Determined to reach a higher level to improve reception, Juliet urges the weary group to double their pace. As they ascend, Juliet tries repeatedly to contact Walker and Shirley, but there's no response. She worries about the battery on the radio running out, but clings to hope that she can figure out a way to communicate with them when she reaches it. Juliet's thoughts drift to Lucas, stranded in his own silo, and her desperate need to inform him of the dire situation. She recalls a conversation with Lucas about wanting to chat from a more comfortable location below, and a realization dawns upon her. Solo's place, where Lucas had been getting updates about the uprising, has a radio locked behind a steel cage, a radio that might just hold the answers she needs. Arriving at Solo's place, Juliet finds the radio locked up. With sheer determination, she manages to break open the cage and access the radio. Turning it on, she dials the frequency for Silo 18, hoping to connect with Walker and Shirley. After what feels like an eternity, a voice crackles through the other end. But to Juliet's utter dismay, it's not Walker or Shirley. It's Bernard. He reveals that he is holding Juliet's belongings, her ID, bracelet, and Lucas' unofficial wedding ring, and taunts her with the news that he's sending Lucas her way, equipped with a suit he personally built to ensure he doesn't make it to the outside. Exhausted and drained, Juliet manages to muster a defiant response, telling Bernard he will burn in hell. Chapter 77, Silo 18. As Lucas is being led to his death, he notices a group of children playing and racing down the stairs with unabashed joy. A sense of temptation lingers in Lucas' mind as he contemplates the possibility of freedom through a fatal leap over the staircase. However, before he can act on it, Peter pulls him away, guiding him to the next level of the silo. The walk feels like a march of shame as they pass by familiar faces, their expressions questioning and uncertain. Lucas ponders the accusations against him, realizing that his words could be as lethal as a virus, capable of destroying everything and everyone he cares about. He understands Juliet's predicament now, feeling a connection to her. Despite knowing the truth, Lucas knows his survival is unlikely, as Bernard has made it clear. On their way to it, Peter's radio suddenly buzzes with Juliet's voice, filling Lucas with a mixture of hope and despair. Bernard responds, demanding silence, and Lucas listens intently as their conversation unfolds. The voices in the radio argue and reveal forbidden secrets, unaware that others are listening. The temptation to end his life resurfaces as Lucas imagines his death playing out over and over. He contemplates leaping over the rail, embracing the notion of true freedom. Peter, too, begins to have second thoughts about bringing Lucas out for cleaning. Their convictions both falter as they slow their pace. In that moment, Lucas decides not to jump. Uncertainty fills their minds, and the weight of their impending fate weighs heavily upon them. Chapter 78, Silo 17. In Silo 17, Juliet regains consciousness in Solo's room, disoriented and weak. As Solo informs her of the others settling into the silo and heading to the upper farms, Juliet is reminded of her mission to save Lucas and the impending danger for those left behind. Worried about the massacre that awaits Lucas and the others in holding cells, she realizes the urgency to act. Determined, she asks Solo about the time and date to recalibrate her thoughts. They confirm it is Friday, 2 a.m, and she recalls her dive down to the bottom of the silo with the compressor. Despite their exhaustion, Juliet and Solo make their way to the suit lab. Solo assists her in preparing heat tape while she gathers the necessary supplies. With Lucas's cleaning scheduled in a few hours, Juliet knows she must act swiftly. She chooses a suit and begins modifying it so that it will not fail in the toxic outdoors. As they work, she explains her plan to show up, alive, at the entrance of Silo 17 when Lucas is being sent out. That will shock the inhabitants of Silo 17 and hopefully inspire the onlookers to take the right side in the impending conflict. Chapter 79, Silo 17. Juliet leaves Silo 17 and makes her way through the desolate landscape, walking back towards Silo 18. As she comes across the scattered remains of the dead, she moves past them with solemnity, feeling a deep sorrow for their fate. The landscape, with its speeding clouds, whipped dust, and jagged rocks, becomes a familiar and strangely comforting sight. Juliet reaches the crest of a hill, taking in the vastness and realizing that there are countless other silos, each with its own inhabitants carrying out their routines. Arriving at the ramp early, Juliet waits anxiously for the doors to open. When they finally do, she is startled to find Lucas already inside, kneeling in the airlock. Acting swiftly, she covers him with the heat tape blanket and positions herself alongside him, fully aware of the impending flames. As the fire engulfs them, Juliet tries to comfort Lucas, but the realization hits her that he has chosen to burn instead of undergoing the cleaning process. This realization fills her with both fear and sadness as they endure the intense heat and flames. Eventually, Lucas pushes Juliet away and tries to escape the blanket. Desperate to stop him, she lunges after him, but he fights her off, leaving her alone in the darkness. The flames rage on, scorching her skin and causing immense pain. Juliet sobs and endures the inferno until it subsides, leaving her with burns and a sense of overwhelming grief. After removing the blanket, she finds Lucas lying against the door, his suit charred and flaking. Juliet crawls closer and realizes that the burnt body before her is not Lucas. She experiences a mix of anger, relief, and confusion as she weeps for the loss of an innocent man who never deserved her tears. Chapter 80, Silo 18. Juliet experiences moments of awareness interspersed with pain as she awakens in the infirmary on level 33. Lucas is by her side, providing comfort and support. Her recovery is challenging, with burns covering her body, but she is grateful for the opportunity to regain her consciousness. She finds solace in Lucas' presence and tries to squeeze his hand as they talk. Lucas assures her that she is looking better and offers to fetch anything she needs. Days go by, and Juliet reads the folded notes she receives, shedding tears for those who have been lost. She weeps for Knox and yearns to see Shirley, but the pain of their losses is too raw. Lucas shares with her the events surrounding the stairway and the choices Sheriff Billings had to make. While escorting Lucas, he was overhearing Bernard on the radio. Even though the people of Mechanical were surrendering, Bernard sentenced them to death. Enough was enough. Perter Billings decided that he was a good man, and ultimately, he knows that he is the one who can define the law and make the right decision for the silo. Chapter 81, Silo 18. A few weeks later, in the conference room of Silo 18, Juliet sat impatiently, her hand covered in a gauze bandage. Lucas and Peter seemed hesitant, exchanging nervous glances. Juliet prodded them to spit out whatever they were holding back. Finally, Lucas revealed that they couldn't give her all the notes sent to her, but it wasn't bad news. It turns out, when Bernard was sent for cleaning, the election got called off, but news of Juliet's return inspired many to vote anyway. The result was a surprising turnout, and now they wanted Juliet to be the new mayor. Juliet couldn't believe it and laughed at the idea. However, she wanted things to change in Silo 18. She proposed a new approach, one based on truth, empowerment, and collective will. Lucas and Peter were hesitant, but Juliet gave them an ultimatum. Either they accept her terms, or she would work against them, spreading the truth. When Peter left the room, Lucas closed the door and held Juliet close. He admitted he didn't want her to go, and they shared an intimate moment before Lucas quickly composed himself. Later, as Juliet prepared to leave, Lucas tried to convince her to stay. But Juliet assured him that she was only going to see her family, particularly her father. With that, she made her way to the great stairwell, ready for the journey ahead and the new role she might take on. Epilogue, Silo 17. Elise, a young girl, bursts with excitement as she climbs the steps of the Down Deep in Silo 17. She joyfully exclaims the number of steps she has climbed and informs Solo, who stands there waiting for her. Elise is beaming with a wide smile, missing a tooth that has recently fallen out. She happily informs Solo that the water is receding, and everything is going to be great. For a moment, Solo contemplates if Elise will cry after her stumble on the last step. But to his surprise, she looks up at him with resilience and assures him she's fine. Elise's optimism fills the air, and Solo can't help but be moved by her contagious enthusiasm. As he holds her against his side, Solo gazes down at the rust-colored stain of old blood on the floor, memories of the past flooding his mind. However, his attention is quickly drawn to the receding waters below, a sign of hope and change. Solo reaches for his radio, eager to share the news with Juliet, knowing how excited she will be. In that moment, Solo realizes that Elise is right. Everything is going to be just fine, and a newfound sense of optimism fills the air of Silo 17. With renewed hope, Solo communicates his excitement over the radio, ready to embrace the promising future ahead. And there we have it, the layers of wool unfurled at warp speed, a tale as deep and compelling as the silo itself. Hugh Howey's masterpiece, now vividly brought to life on Apple TV, has once again reminded us of the power of stories to challenge, to captivate, and to change us. In our fast-paced journey through the dystopian depths of the silo, we've not just read. We've experienced every twist, every revelation, side by side. This is the heart of our channel, bringing the essence of these narratives to you, swiftly yet soulfully, ensuring that even the most intricate tales are accessible to all. If you enjoyed this summary and want to conquer more books faster, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We've got a whole library of chapter-by-chapter breakdowns waiting for you.